7 on that clock. 7 exactly on my phone. We'll call it 7 exact. Let me call to order the meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board for Tuesday, December 19th. Let me remind everyone who will address the board to make sure your microphone is turned on and speak clearly into it so the folks at home can hear you, and also to sign in on this clipboard that's on the table in front of me. By way of announcement, our next planning board meeting is January 2nd. Next planning board meeting, January 2nd at 7 p.m. in this room. Let me, because I need to appoint our alternate into a voting position, let me introduce to everybody Dan Ricker, who is our newly appointed, newly minted alternate member of the planning board. Nelson, you're also an alternate. Lynn, Mike, and Desiree are all absent today, so let's appoint you for Lynn and you for Mike. And everybody's voting tonight. We do have 5 members, which makes a quorum. And with that, Robert, do you have anything for Planning and Zoning Administrator's report?
Nothing this evening, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Any questions by members of the board for the staff? So you want to tell me, you need a second to get settled, or are you okay? Okay. If there are no other questions for the Planning and Zoning Administrator, let's move to item 3 on our agenda, which is discussion of the capital improvement program for the town of Merrimack. And although a familiar face comes forward, we'll still do introductions.
Good evening. My name is Paul McKelly. I am the Assistant Town Manager and Finance Director for the town of Merrimack. Eileen Cabanel, the Town Manager, sends her regrets for not being here tonight. Tonight I'd like to go over the capital improvement plan for the town of Merrimack. And hopefully, I learned from years past. I will go over all the items tonight and not just the ones in what's coming up next year.
Oh, okay.
As you can see, it's easier for us to keep the dollar values in there because it's easier for us to figure out what year for the town as we budget this.
You can see, I can't see that.
It's up though. What year we're budgeting for these projects. The first project, and I have more backup slides, I just wanted to show this for the public, is that we're looking at a public safety complex. US 3 bridge over Babuzik Brook, that's by Piningburg's, the old Piningburg gas station. Stormwater drain improvements, paving infrastructure of gravel roads, paving DW Highway, and as I'll explain, we do plan on doing our paving over so many years, but we're also looking into doing some crack sealing in a couple of years out. Wire Road intersection improvements, Turkey Road Hill intersection improvements, Merrimack River boat access improvements, that was formerly Griffin Street from last year. Severance Bridge canoe launch, that's new. There's a meeting of the minds between us and the Conservation Commission. There's some land on conservation that we're looking at to do some improvements in that area for boat canoe launch. Sidewalks, there's 3 sidewalk projects. Daniel Webster and Woodbury sidewalk, Daniel Webster and Babuzik Lake sidewalk, and Babuzik Lake Road sidewalk, Joppa Road to Meadow and Bennett. A couple of those are placeholders for the time being. Looking at some sewer line extensions in the Mayflower McQuestion area. And then we have a bunch of placeholders for the library, looking at their internal sidewalk, their slate roof, the drainage trench by the children's room, internal elevator, the new library. There's looking at maybe a potential of a study and a placeholder for a bond, and then new athletic fields placeholder. That's our general fund. And in our sewer fund, we have 2 projects. One is a relocate sewer connector under the F.E. Everett Turnpike, with the Turnpike expansion project, and the wastewater treatment plant phase 3 and some pump station upgrades. Now to get a little bit into the details for the public safety complex. What the town is looking to do is to combine the police and the South Fire Station to one location. The police station was built, 2 buildings were built. One was built in 1960, one was built in 1975. They were built as 2 separate medical buildings. In 1994, there was some remodeling done, and it was donated to the town as the police department and the center. The two buildings were combined with a center structure. The South Fire Station was built in 1973 as a two-bay garage. It was remodeled in 1987 to include living quarters down at the south end of town. In 2018-19, the town is going to undertake a space needs study between the police and fire stations, and then the findings will be presented to the town council in 2018, and will probably appear in the, once we have those findings, will appear in the 2019 CIP. The bridge replacement on US 3, that's, like I said, the bridge by Piningbird. The bridge crosses the Babuzik Brook prior to the Salhegan River. The hydraulic analysis of the brook performed by the town's bridge consultant shows the current structure constricts flow. This will be the last bridge in the pattern. We've done Wire Road. We're in the process of doing Bedford Road. We did McGaw Bridge Road. The US 3 bridge will be the last bridge on that stream to be completed. Looking because of the DOT and the plans with DOT and the funding of DOT, that's looking to be in the 2022-23 era, with when we can get the funding for our 80% state aid for bridges. Stormwater drainage improvements. We're anticipating projects during the upcoming construction season in the Brenda Lane, South Babuzik Lake Road, Thornton Road West, Waterville Road, Wilson Hill Road, Woodland Drive, Phase 2 of the drainage design, and townwide basin repairs. Also, a couple weeks ago, as Deputy Director of Public Works gave a presentation to the council about a DIP program, Drainage Improvement Plan, and we'll be working to start videotaping all our drainage pipes and culverts throughout town. Paving infrastructure, we try to put in at least $750,000 a year, if not more. In this current year's budget, 18-19, we increased that to $800,000, and we hope to increase it every year going forward. And basically what that does, it paves all the roads except DW Highway, which has its own capital reserve fund for paving. But Babuzik Lake Road, Bean Road, Bedford Road, Pearson Road, Continental Boulevard, all the roads throughout town. And as you can see, we have done quite a bit of number of roads. Last year we did Amherst Road, where we did basically a repair of the whole road. We took it down to the sub base, and then we did some repaving, a 3/4 inch super paved base for a depth of 2 inches, and the final top coat of a 1/2 inch. So we repaved the whole Amherst Road area. And the year before that, we've done other roads like Bedford Road, Natticook Road, Camp Sargent Road, sorry. We're looking at doing roads in conjunction with other projects when we do the other projects, such as if we're paving a road, we look at drainage and other items as well. So we're trying to do a comprehensive repair so that we're not going in there right after we repave a road and going in there and cutting up a new road that we just repaved. So we try to do everything at once. Gravel roads, what we're looking to do is we're looking to pave some gravel roads for a couple of reasons. One is that we have a piece of equipment that's getting older and is due to come out of service in the next 5 years. And because of this piece of equipment and the time that is spent from our highway department on it, we're looking to pave Greens Pond Road, Lester Drive, and Fulham Mill Road. Currently, also there's a project for the Old Blood Road to be paved, the gravel portion of Old Blood Road, through a contractor. Daniel Webster Highway, I kind of mentioned this a little bit. We've done the paving from Greeley Street to the Chamberlain Bridge, and then from the Chamberlain Bridge we went up to right around where Reed's Ferry Lumber was. We've done extensive work. We ground the whole length of road there. We're looking at bonding it and the wearing course and trying to expand the life by doing some crack sealing. As you know, in New England, water is the most damaging thing to a road. when it gets in there and those freeze thaw cycles, if there's some cracks, it kind of breaks up that wearing course quickly. So we're looking to try to preserve that portion of the road. Some Wire Road intersection improvements. This is the area by the MYA. Looking to do that kind of in conjunction with the US 3 bridge. When we do that, it makes sense to look at everything with that. And we're looking at several different options as we go forward, and the best option as we get closer will be presented to the town. Turkey Hill Road improvement. Looking at that in the next couple of years to improve. Excuse me, those are not familiar, that's that intersection where you come off of Babuzik Lake Road. It's right near Joppa, and you come down. You have to take the left to get on Turkey Hill Road, and it's almost there's a curve right there. So we're looking at improving the line of sight and area in that area where you come off of Babuzik to Turkey Hill Road, and the vice versa if you're coming off of Turkey Hill to Babuzik, to make the traffic flow and the line of sights better. The Merrimack Riverboat access improvement. This was going down by Griffin Street. There's been a lot of talk about that. One of the problems with the Griffin Street is that there's a train trestle that makes it difficult for some of our larger equipment to get down there and be able to grade the roads and take care of that access into the Griffin Street boat ramp. Kyle Fox, Director Fox, came up with an idea. We have a piece of land that is near our solid waste facility. I'm not a solid waste, our wastewater treatment plant, sorry. Our wastewater treatment plant, and we're looking at basically going in there and making that where we put the access to the Merrimack River. It's larger for recreational boats. It gives us better parking, access, and we're looking into doing this project, and we're trying to get some state funds to match for this project as well. Severance Bridge canoe launch. This is the project that I told you about earlier that we're working with the Souhegan River Advisory Group. Our Conservation Commission has a piece of land over there. We're looking to relocate the existing canoe launch to the Fields Farm conservation land. We're talking with conservation, and we're trying to work out the details. The
Have an existing canoe launch?
There is an existing canoe launch. It's right on the corner there. If you're going towards the golf course, Souhegan Woods, if you take the left onto Severance Bridge Road, it's right there. Okay. On the right. So it's difficult to park. It's definitely a slope to go into the boat canoe launch. The parking is rutted. If people end up parking on Severance Bridge Road, it shrinks that road down. Okay. There's erosion in that area as well. So we're looking to move it to an area where there's ample parking and not as steep of a slope. Say that 5 times fast. And then we're looking at some sidewalk, the DW Woodbury Drive one. We received some TAP funding, and we're looking at doing the first phase, I believe. Don, correct me, this is the one that we have out for the... we have this out, we're looking for engineers to help us with this project. So that's out right now, and that will close January 15th. So... and then we have other enhancements, sidewalk enhancement, Babuzik Lake Road, DW Highway. This would be by the police station, the schools, things of that sort. What we're looking there is also to apply for TAP funding, and this is priority number 7 on the Trail Master. Was outlined many areas of the town center, and this is priority number 7. And we're going to try to get TAP funding to help us work through this as well. And TAP is Transportation Alternative Program Funds. Once again, another sidewalk is Babuzik Lake Road to the middle school. We're looking to expand the sidewalk that ends at Joppa Road and take that all the way up to Mount Auburn Bennett. And once again, we'll be looking for the TAP program in the out years to help us fund these sidewalks. Sewer line extension project. The town had a plan, a master sewer plan in 2013. This was one of the areas that was a priority in that plan. Mayflower Drive Collector Sewer Project was number 3. McQuestion Road North Collector Sewers was number 2. We're looking to bring this forward to the town in 2019-20, possibly for a bond vote because of the dollar magnitude of about just over $2.3 million. But we're looking to upgrade our sewer system in that area and our system. Relocation, I'm going to, like I said, the library projects and Park and Recs are really on the major projects as placeholders. These are projects that we felt were needed and essential. However, we need to do more research about the slate roof and that drainage trench. And as you can see, those are all out, and the library is looking to probably do a kind of a space needs study to see what projects and put them in priority order going forward. And if we're going to do a new library, if they're planning on bringing a new library forward, then we look at these projects and see how they progress. So they're on there for basically placeholders. If I could jump to sewer line relocation under Everett Turnpike. What this is that the New Hampshire Department was working towards widening the 2-lane sections of what they call the FEET, F.E. Everett Turnpike in Merrimack. As part of that project, they're replacing concrete box culvert that carries Natticook Brook and one of our sewer pipes. That's a no-no. They don't like that. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to basically a gravity pipe will eliminate the maintenance requirements associated with the pump station, and we're hoping to coordinate that when they do the FEET project in the area. And then the last project that I have is basically our wastewater treatment facility. This is the 3rd phase, and this will mean that this will be the last phase. And we'll be replacing some of our older equipment, our secondary clarifiers, our primary clarifier, main pump stations, new motors, coatings, lighting, systems, support systems. So this will be the last phase of our rehab to our wastewater treatment plant. That's been going on now since I've been here. I think around at least 10 to 13 years that we've been doing this in phases. We just completed phase 2 in the compost facility last year. This will be the 3rd year, and we're looking at bonding this in out years. That's all I have for the presentation. Been more than willing to answer any questions that I can, if you have any.
Do any members of the board have questions for Mr. McKelly? Nelson, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to, because the scale is very small, I couldn't tell for sure on the Turkey Hill Road intersection of Hoosick Lake Road, and also the Wire Road. On those intersections, is there provision for a stacking lane for traffic that's on the Hoosick Lake Road heading west, wanting to make a left turn? Is there room enough to make another lane there?
I would have to defer that to Director Fox.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack. As you can see in the middle picture on the slide there, that's one of our options, which would take Turkey Hill Road and swing it in a curve to a 90-degree alignment with Babusick Lake Road. And what we're proposing, if we go with that alternative, is as you head towards the middle school on Babusick, there would be a left turn lane to make the turn onto Turkey Hill Road. So because of the curvature of the road, there is some limited sight distance and speed issues. So we wanted to make sure that there was a turn pocket so that we didn't have rear end collisions at the new intersection. On Wire Road, it's too premature to know at this point.
But it should be considered.
It would absolutely be considered.
There is
Yep.
on our road. So I wasn't so worried about that, but the Turkey Hill Road one, I know that's a little spooky when you're sitting there,
Nelson,
hoping the guy behind you.
they
sees
can't hear you on microphone. You're too far away from it.
I'm sorry, okay. Should I repeat all of that? I was concerned with with provision for a stacking lane for westbound traffic on Babusick Lake Road, making a left turn onto Turkey Hill Road. And the director has assured me that it will be considered as part of that intersection. If it's done this way, with a roundabout, it's not so much of a concern.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, while the director's on his feet, can I beg, as one who goes through the town regularly driving a big, large vehicle, roundabouts, please. We have too many traffic lights in this town already. And I would hope you would give very serious consideration to putting roundabouts at both those junctions. They would do two things. Above all else, they would reduce the speeds and stop people leaping in front of other people. It's the safest solution, and I beg you to give really serious thought to putting roundabouts in both those locations. They would make them so much safer.
It's definitely an option we're looking into. You can see on this slide in the bottom picture, we've got a mock-up of what a roundabout at the Turkey Hill intersection would look like. You're correct, that is the safest intersection because it does control the speed so well, and it completely eliminates the possibility of T-bone kind of accidents. When you do have accidents in a roundabout, they're less severe. The drawback to a roundabout, of course, is cost. They do cost quite a bit more. But we will definitely consider both options.
Thank you.
All options are on the table for
I
those
think
two.
also, just to throw my 2 cents in there, I think when we heard last meeting from the National Regional Planning Commission folks about pedestrian-friendly areas, one of the critical elements to establishing something as being pedestrian-friendly is slowing the traffic to below 30. And you can't get to their safe or green or whatever category that they used for the best walkable area unless you get those speed limits down, which the roundabouts will do. And I think, although I agree with everything that's been said about the Turkey Hill intersection, the bigger concern I have is at Wire Road, because the alternative you have on the board in place of a roundabout is a red light, which I think is just, I think it would be a bad idea. I think that you'd end up with the red lights too close together and stacking traffic between them, as we do at exit 11, where the traffic doesn't clear one intersection between the light cycles in order to get to the next one. So, and I know that there's ways to coordinate traffic lights and all that kind of great stuff because we're hearing lots about it, but I think you'd be much better off with a roundabout or some other solution other than a traffic light at Wire Road, for my 2 cents.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have anybody have any more questions for Kyle while he's up? Paul, one of our duties is to kind of rank these things using this scale of urgent, necessary, desirable, deferrable, premature, and inconsistent. Does the administration have a proposal or a proposed ranking for the items that you've put on here?
Actually, the administration does not have a proposal. We were looking forward to get the proposal from the planning board and getting your rankings as you see fit.
Okay. My impression is that almost everything that you've listed here are certainly the kinds of infrastructures related to transportation and wastewater and things that need to get done. My own opinion is that when you're looking at something that's kind of a few years out where you're still planning, it's a little tough to call that urgent, even though it's important that it occurs in 2021 or whatever it's scheduled. I like that there's some consideration of the library and ball fields and those kinds of things. I think it makes sense that they're a little far out in the future as the details haven't been nailed down. I think that probably warrants it getting. You've already made that decision that it's probably not urgent, but it's probably exploratory. I think maybe even you've used that word today. So we may probably do the same thing when we get to consider those. That's sort of in a general sense what my opinion is of the rankings without sort of going line by line.
Right.
I am really, really pleased to see, even as just placeholders, sidewalk projects. I think they just add a lot to the town for people to get around, to have sidewalks to get out to the middle school and around the center of town. You got lots of them on here, and I applaud the town council and administration for coming up with a plan for that. Alistair, yeah.
Well, there's two that I worry about. One is the boat ramp access and the canoe launch access. Given the worries that we've had about, I forget what the weed is called, does the town insist, will it make provisions for people to clean their boats, ramps, canoes, whatever it is, in case they've had them somewhere else? We don't want them bringing more weeds from another part of the country, Maine or somewhere, and dumping them into our rivers. What precautions do we take to stop that happening?
Well, you have the milfoil expert sitting with you tonight, Robert. We've been working closely together, and it's the milfoil that's been in two of our lakes in town. And basically, we post signs. We ask people and boaters to make sure their boats are clean. It's a little bit self-policing in the boating industry. If people see a boat going in with the milfoil, or they see some signs of a milfoil, they'll say something to one another. We try to educate, put up pictures, listing that, if your boat has been in other rivers, things of that sort, please check it. Make sure there's no milfoil that is attached to it. It stays around. And to look over your boats. And we do have those in, I believe we do, Robert, do we have one at Horseshoe Pond? I believe they were
signage there.
I
believe so.
Signage at Horseshoe Pond. And I believe, Kyle, when we did Natticook, we put up signage also at that boat ramp.
I was thinking of something rather more vigorous than signage. I mean, like a washing station or something like that.
It's something that we can look into for sure. I don't know the means or how we would do that, because if they're washing their boat, is it going to go back in the river anyways? So it'd be something that we would have to look into when we're engineering it.
Well, perhaps if when you're worrying about it, go and look at the vehicle cleaning system that's just been put in on that. And I forget where the people who we've just approved. They have a beautiful system for washing vehicles. I'm sure we should be able to develop something for washing boats and things. It's certainly common elsewhere in the world. I think we should surely be doing it, because the milfoil damage that's occurring to this state is significant.
Yes. Yes.
It is, although washing stations are a bit interesting, because the mechanism is that you pull your boat out of the water and then wash it off before you leave. That protects the rest of the world from whatever came out of your water, not your water from theirs, because they don't wash before they go into your water. They wash on the way out.
No, when I am quite used to seeing boats that have to be washed before they are launched.
Fair enough.
Something that we can look into for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I have a couple
Nelson.
questions. A couple comments regarding the boat ramp. We went down there and had a look at it. I'm also on the Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee, and we had a look at it, and it looked like there's a tremendous amount of cut that has to be done to the banks there. It's about a 30-foot bank with a very steep drop-off to the river on the site that you've selected here. And there was a concern to the advisory committee as to the amount of work that needed to be done to get to clear a considerable amount of woodland, and to then excavate down to a level where you can actually launch a boat there. It looked like a difficult proposition. I don't know how far along it's gone, but there's some serious looking has to be done at that. A suggestion that they had made was to move the launch to the north side of the wastewater treatment plant, in and around the area where Pennachuck has their intake. There, the bank is only 20 feet high, so it's a little bit easier. But still, those are considerations and concerns from the local advisory committee that probably get woven in here at some point.
Yeah, I believe the boat launch is a few years out, but it's something that we will definitely, Dawn's here tonight, and she hears your concerns, and
Yeah.
she hears their concerns, and it'll be something that she works with when she's putting a plan together.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Tom?
Paul, can you touch a little bit more on the public safety complex, the need and urgency, and how we came to decide that maybe we put both police and fire together? And
Yes. For a number of years, we've been looking at the South Fire Station and South Fire Station alone. And I think a few years back, there was a bond that was put on the warrant to see if the town wanted to relocate the South Fire Station. And I believe it did pass by majority, but not supermajority. And as we kept on looking at the need in that area for living quarters and diversity with staffing and things of that sort, it's becoming more difficult to have adequate living quarters and electrical needs and needs for equipment to park the equipment, and a lot of cross contamination when the firefighters come in from fighting a fire. There isn't a spot where they can take off their turnout gear without going into the living quarters because of the way that location was built. There was no, for lack of a better word, breezeway between their living quarters and the South Fire Station. So that was one of the concerns as we looked into items and just this overall size of the facility. Then we started looking at the police station, and we're outgrowing that police station that is there. Communication needs, server room needs, things of that sort. Where we're located, where stuff is located, we found that was not the best spot to put some of these items in, such as our computers next to water valves and water mains and things of that sort. So we started looking at other areas, and in doing so, our dispatch and our police station is getting older, and we had to look at the cost of maintaining the building, the veneer. The brick veneer now is kind of peeling off of the building. That's on the left hand. If you're looking at the police station on the left hand side, the brick veneer is peeling off. If you looked on the right hand side, we had to repoint the brick that was there and reattach it to the building because that was falling off. Parking needs with the police cruisers and detectives and just our vehicles alone take up a lot of the area, and it's the parking needs, and the parking lots need to be rebuilt, and the air conditioning is getting old. So we were looking at a lot of different things at our police station, and when we were talking about it with the council at the retreat, somebody brought up the point that maybe it's time to look at, is the cost benefit analysis for the police station, if we got to start putting in this much money and we're outgrowing the police station, is it time maybe to do a combined safety complex, and we can garner efficiencies through scale. Dispatch would be there in between. There would be shared conference rooms, things of that sort. So that's how we started with thinking about this public safety complex. And then we decided that maybe we need, like we did with the highway garage, do a space needs study to see what the actual footage is needed and the space is needed for both fire and police, so that we could if we wanted to break one out of the project, we could, and get a better scale of just building a building that's going to suit our needs for now and the future, instead of hitting a target number on a bond and saying that's what we want to build it to, and in 5 years the building's not adequate. So that's really what we're looking at there, is to do a combined station, garner some efficiency of needs, get them not away from this area, but more towards where some of the police activities and some of the major industrial in town is with that, and have access to the highway a lot easier than coming through town and to get on the highway and things of that sort. So that's why we started looking at a combined facility in the southern. We don't know where it's going to be located. We believe it's going to be in the southern portion of the town someplace.
Does moving the police station out of the central part of town create any complications, or is, because they're in their cruisers most of the time running around town,
Because
kind
of
is insignificant?
because of the sectors, basically what would be moved over there is the jail cells and administration. They're in their cars, they're in their sectors a lot, so it would be moving more towards where that part of town, it will be a lot, it's not going to cause a problem because we'll still have coverage throughout town in the police and the fire. Central Station will still be here. There's just fire station will just be police and South Fire. Police, because they're in their sector cars, in their 4 or 5 sectors that they have, they'll still be patrolling. So we didn't see that as a big problem. It was more of a space needs.
Maybe you just answered it. I didn't catch it as it went by. Is this station here going to stay? Or is that going to be used for something else, or who knows what?
We're too early in the process to plan of what's going to happen with that and things of that sort. We're eventually going to be looking into that if the space needs study does come up and say that it's feasible to move both the police and fire into one safety complex. Then we'll start looking at, okay, what are going to be the plans for that building? Are we going to keep it? Are we going to sell it? What are we going to do with it?
I was thinking more specifically keeping it as a second police station. There's no intention of 2 police stations.
No, there's no intention of having 2 police station or an annex.
Nelson?
You know, one of the considerations when we put the courthouse here was its proximity to the police station. I don't know if this is getting away from that or if that need has been considered, but at that time it was thought to be a benefit to have the police and court close to each other physically, but I don't know if that's still in the mix or not.
With our prosecutor will still be in town, they won't be that far away, probably, 4 miles at most out that way. So they will still, with our prosecutor, if the case is coming up, they can call the police officer to come in if they're on duty and things of that sort. So it's not like we're not next door or across the street anymore, but we are. That's something that we'd look into, but
Just
we're
have it
still within the area.
in the mix of considerations.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're still within the area.
Did I pick up that you're still going to keep the central fire station as well as the safety complex?
Yes.
The South Fire Station would be eliminated.
Right.
I hear where you're coming from, but the idea of safety complexes is that all the senior people of both services are together. And in every town that I can think of, they have this big safety complex, and that's the safety complex, and they don't have other fire stations and police stations floating around in the town. I am surprised. Let's leave it at that.
We have not made a determination where the senior staff of the fire department will be located. We will still need to have an auxiliary fire station because of the times to get to Babuza Lake, and we have to meet our response times. And if in the south, you would not meet the response times if you had one station in the south to go all the way up to the north end of town and meet those response times. So we would definitely have to be running 2 fire stations because of that.
Which we do today.
Right.
I'm not arguing, but the
Oh, okay.
concept of a safety complex in my mind is you have the brass, everything, all the organisation, the dispatch people all together in one place. I mean, every town that does it, Bedford, Brookline, they all have one, and I'm surprised. But I understand call-out times. Don't get me wrong. Response times I recognise.
And Bedford actually contacted us about on the north end of town. They were thinking about building one years ago. I think the town even passed it. They just never built it. So
That's
they were
correct.
thinking about
You are
having
correct. Yeah.
auxiliary. And I know Derry, who has a safety complex, also has several different auxiliary fire
Yes.
stations.
But not the big central one in the centre like we have. Anyway, Paul, it's up to the people who think it through, and we'll
Right.
no doubt learn.
Yep. We'll learn through the process.
Thank you for that. Other questions or comments? Nelson?
Just one more thank you to the staff for pulling this together the way you have and including the pedestrian considerations that are in here. And I think this is one of the nicest capital improvement programs I've seen in a number of years. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Hey, your presentation is also very clear and very concise and to the point, and you got through the material pretty quick, so thank you for that. I think it's been
No problem. I know you have a
good
long
experience.
agenda.
There you go.
So-
If there's no other questions for Paul, my suggestion to the board is that we take up the rankings at the end of our agenda so that the good folks in the public that are waiting to hear some of these applications don't have to sit through that boring exercise. And then we'll correspond with you guys with the in writing, as we always do, with a letter and a ranking.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing it. Thank you for coming in,
problem.
and see you next year.
Next year. Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Happy holidays. Safe.
Thank you, Paul. With that, we will table this one on our agenda till the end of the night and take up the next item on our agenda, which is K&A Associates, Inc. and Charles H. Hazen as the applicants, and Richard P. and Juliana D. Hazen as the owners. Request for an extension of final approval of a lot line adjustment and subdivision plan for 5 parcels minor subdivision. The parcels are located at 90 and 94 Wilson Hill Road in the R1 Residential and Aquifer Conservation and Flood Hazard Conservation Districts. Tax map 4B, lot 114 and 114-2. The item was conditionally approved at the June 20th, 2017 Planning Board meeting. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant's representative?
No, this is a very straightforward request.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself and tell us where we're at with things.
Good evening, board. My name is Brent Cole, Keach Nordstrom Associates.
I don't think your microphone's on. There we go.
Try again.
Good evening, board. My name is Brent Cole,
Better.
Keach Nordstrom Associates. We were here before you in June, the small subdivision off of Upham Road. We have addressed all the comments except one, all the conditions of approval except one. We have submitted Mylar. The only condition of approval that's left is the easement documents and the deeds, and that's currently being worked with town council and the applicant's attorney. They just needed a little more time to go over a few details, I believe, but those will likely be submitted soon. We're just asking for a 6 months extension. Likely we won't need all of that, but we're on the right page and moving forward.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation. Any questions by members of the board? What's the will of the board with respect to the request?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the requested extension for 6 months, just to give them time to complete the legal documents.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion to give 6 months to complete conditions of approval? Second by Nelson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Did you raise your hand for opposed?
No,
Oh, I thought you moved. You caught
I
out of the
was
corner.
saying aye, I thought,
Oh.
but
I'm sorry. You caught me out of the corner of my eye, and I kind of. So, 5-0-0 to grant the extension. Thank you very much for the presentation, and good luck with those things. Item 5 on our agenda is Synergy Self-Storage LLC as the applicant and owner. Continued review for acceptance and consideration of waiver of full site plan review for modifications to the previously approved site plan regarding access and parking. The parcel is located at 403 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial Aquifer Conservation and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts. A portion of the parcel is subject to the Flood Hazard Conservation District, Tax Map 43, Lot 84-1. The item is continued from our October 17th, 2017 Planning Board meeting, where we left the applicant with a handful of engineering tasks to complete. And Robert, my understanding is that he just needs a little extra time to complete those. Is that
Right,
correct?
that's correct. Yeah, since the applicant last met with the board, he's engaged an engineer, and they're still working out the drainage engineering. So they just need more time to put that together.
So the applicant has requested a continuance to our February 16th, 2018. I'm sorry, February 6th, 2018 meeting. I got my 6 and my 18 confused. Any discussion? What's the will of the board with request to,
I
with
think that's
regard
a
to the
rather
request?
long extension, but that's, I suppose, if he hasn't done the work, we can't really do anything about it.
Well, I don't want him to come back in January and ask for another one. I'd rather
No.
give him plenty of time
I
to get this
agree.
done.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we grant the extension. We don't have to.
Continuance.
Continuance.
Just, yeah, we make a motion that we grant the continuance to the February the 6th, 2018 meeting
Is there a second for Alistair's motion? Second by Nelson. Since it hasn't been accepted, there's no bit to add with the no further notice kind of a thing.
No.
So, motion properly made and seconded to continue to February 6th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? That is 5-0-0 to grant that extension. And that brings us to item 6 on our agenda, which is for Executive Park Realty LLC as the applicant and owner. Conceptual discussion regarding an upcoming site plan to construct 280 multifamily residential units, clubhouse, and other associated site improvements. Formal application is scheduled for our January 2nd, 2018 meeting. The parcels are located at 4 and 6 Executive Park Drive in the C2 General Commercial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and 100-year flood hazard area. Tax map 4D lot 76 and 77. Robert, anything we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
No, just to echo again that this is not the formal public hearing, as the application is not before you tonight. It's just a concept to introduce the project to the board. This is a non-binding discussion, so no formal decision should be made. And that's really about it.
Thank you for that, Robert. And to echo and amplify the point that Robert was making for the benefit of the public is the applicant is here before us on what's called a conceptual design review. They can't achieve anything that allows them to put a shovel in the ground at this meeting tonight. It's just for discussion purposes.
Yeah, and also it's the advice of staff that because Mr. Ricker, though he is now appointed and seated as the board member tonight, that he recuse himself from this discussion as he has spoken out against the project previously.
Okay. Okay. Still holding a quorum. We're still able to have a meeting for you here tonight. So, although we certainly know you, please introduce yourself and tell us where we stand with the project.
Good evening, members, Mr. Chairman and members. Attorney Greg Michael. I'm here with Austin Turner. Also with me are the project's principals, Tom Preto and James Preto, as well as our traffic consultant, Jason Plord, to answer any questions. As you know, we've been before the board on a couple of occasions, specifically October 17th and November 7th, the principal purpose of which was to review traffic issues. And I know that there's been quite a bit of data and information about that's been given to you, and that's really not the purpose of this particular meeting. At the close of that meeting, the board was interested in possibly looking at a comparable site to have us look at to kind of verify some of the ITE numbers that are being used to describe what the traffic implications might be. We went to Waterford Place. I should say Jason Plord and his group went to Waterford Place. They submitted a November 30th summary to you that's pretty much self-explanatory. And without beating a dead horse, we can certainly beat it if we want. It basically confirms that the ITE figures are I think a bit high for a project of this type. If you take a look, you'll notice that in most every category, the numbers were not specifically what ITE seemed to suggest they might be. And I think that further confirms the information that we've given to you. And again, Mr. Porter's here if we have to review that further. But again, I know we're here for more of a conceptual discussion regarding our plan itself. But again, he is here. We want to take a look at some of the technical aspects of this, give the board an opportunity to provide us a little, again, non-binding discussion and input. We recognize the fact that abutters were not notified. We understand that. We respect the position that we're in. But we would like to at least review some of these things with you in an effort to have you and us gain an understanding of where we are. I will mention that we still need to get to the Conservation Commission due to the location of this property. And again, that was not agendaed for the 18th yesterday, and will be on the January 22nd meeting to meet with the Conservation Commission. We'd like to think we might be back here before that, and certainly anything that you do would be conditioned on any recommendations that you might consider appropriate for the project. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to Austin Turner from Bowler Associates to kind of take you through the plan, if that's the right word to use. That's what it is, our site plan for this location, so that we can all gain a better understanding of kind of where we're going and do our best to respond to any of your questions, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Michael.
Good evening. For the record, Austin Turner with Bowler Engineering. Thought what I would do, last time we appeared in front of the planning board with our site plan, we were very much in the conceptual phase, and we were just starting to introduce this and get the board's feedback. So as we went to real and kind of the formal design, if you will, that feedback that you had given us initially could be incorporated. The plan that you see on the screen is the formal design. It's very, very similar in composition to what we had looked at conceptually. We've been spending a lot of time with your staff, life safety personnel, both fire, police, planning, engineering, and going through and soliciting feedback subsequent to when we filed at the end of November to today. We've gotten really good feedback. We're going to be refining this plan a little bit. So what I will do, I'll walk you through kind of how this program has taken shape, some of the specific components of it, and then I'll let you know where we are in the review process, the feedback we received, and the things that we're doing to kind of nip and tuck at this plan, if you will, to improve it based on the comments your team's provided. So as you're probably familiar, this project incorporates 280 units of residential. It's going to be in 5 buildings, as you can see on the plan. For the purposes of this discussion, the parcel that's kind of centrally located and where you see those 3 buildings, I'm going to refer to that as parcel 4, just for simplification of this conversation. And then on the right side of that graphic, you're going to see 2 buildings. I'm going to refer to that as parcel 6. Parcel 4 is where the balance of the project really lies. You've got about 192 units in 3 buildings there. Those buildings are going to be 4 stories with parking garage underneath. Those parking garages will be partially exposed to the elements out of the back of the property. The little rectangle in the middle of the screen that you see in front of the middle building, that's going to be a clubhouse for the residents. That's going to have amenities such as a small gym. It's going to have a little cafe in there. They'll have office space, things like that. It's going to kind of be the central hub, if you will, for this facility where residents have the ability to work out or things of that nature. Parking and access are reasonably straightforward. One of the driveways is going to be the driveway that currently exists for the Wood Springs Suites Hotel. You can see it, if you see my cursor moving around, just down here in your lower left corner. We are proposing a new driveway on Executive Park Drive here on the north side. And then the residences that are going to be built on parcel 6 will be accessed by their own driveway to that piece of property as well. The development on parcel 6 essentially will stand by itself. There will be pedestrian connectivity amongst the parcels, but from a topographic standpoint and a natural resource perspective, they're divided. There's a substantial topographic break there. There's also a portion of the brook which straddles the boundary, and in light of those conditions, it doesn't make sense to connect those properties without a substantial amount of environmental work, both earthwork and wetlands crossings perspectives. From a utilities perspective, we intend to connect into the municipal infrastructure that's available. There is a primary trunk line which runs through this property. It serves some of the abutting properties. It also serves some of the properties to the west. We intend to maintain that and use it and connect to it. We've been working with the Department of Public Works and the Sewer Department on that and have received favorable feedback thus far. Water connections will be made to the system that is available in Executive Park Drive. In working with the Water Department, they expressed a desire for us to also connect into the system that is available on Amherst Road. And what that actually does is it's really a benefit to the municipality, really, in that it loops those systems and provides a redundant supply for this project. I thought that was a good suggestion from the Water Department. We're going to incorporate that into the plans. Stormwater is going to be through a combination of above-ground systems that are intended to capture and detain and infiltrate stormwater. We're also going to put some localized stormwater basins underground for infiltration, which by nature of spreading them out, you're not centralizing stormwater. You get a much better recharge and a better distribution of stormwater as you're going into the ground, more even and really intended to mimic existing hydrology as much as you can, which is really what we're tasked with doing when we're designing a system to both comply with the municipal standards as well as those that the Department of Environmental Services would have us look at as we're designing a component like that. One item that we are working with the board, or we respectfully requesting from the board, in addition to approval from the site plan, would be a waiver for the parking, where we have some math in the zoning analysis table. As we get into our discussion kind of formally at the hearings, so the parking requirements here are twofold. It's a little bit of high order calculus. It's 1.25 units, or 1.25 spaces per unit, plus an additional half a space per bed, as I believe. And what that generates is a really, really high parking count. And it puts the ratio for, on a per unit basis, almost in near 3. And what that means, it doesn't really mean anything in this context, but to further that discussion, we're not proposing 3-bedroom units here. You can have single bedroom or 2-bedroom units. So that parking ratio is a little bit elevated in that regard. So what we're doing, the area on parcel 4, it has some different components. You have residences, which is the primary use. You have the clubhouse, which is small. It's approximately 4,000 square feet and has that amenity component. And then we've been speaking with some of our neighbors on Amherst Road and, acknowledging that the Wood Springs property is there. It's an independent parcel, but there's the ability to kind of cross-pollinate. We don't expect that to happen. We've kind of elevated the parking count a little bit on parcel 4, that central location. That area will be consistent with your parking requirements. We wouldn't necessarily be seeking a waiver for that part of it, because there's a little bit of a mixed-use component happening there, even though those parcels aren't connected to each other. We don't envision needing that extra parking space for the residential component of this, but in speaking with some of our neighbors, they'd expressed a desire for us to maintain as high a count on that property as possible. So that's what we're in the process of doing. Parcel 6, where it's operating much more independently and essentially is its own independent project, we're looking for more of a waiver on that side of it. And what we've built in working with the operator here and our historical experience with projects of a similar composition, the ratios that you typically are looking for in a project like that would be about 1.5 spaces per unit. And where they're predominantly going to be single or 2-bedroom units, what we look to do is also achieve a parking ratio of approximately 1 space per bedroom. So what that means is if you have 2 bedrooms in a unit, and those 2 residents each have a vehicle, well, then you're sufficiently parked. Whereas the town's requirement would push that ratio in the high 2s to almost 3, which when you look at it in that context, you have some redundant parking there. So I believe in the town's regulations, you have the ability to work with us on what you feel is an appropriate level of parking. And as we get into some more of those discussions and we're talking about parking in detail, I'm happy to run through some of the real specific and really the nerdy math, if you will. As an engineer, it's what I'm kind of focused on. So,
Yeah, we're all engineers too.
okay, good, perfect. Then I can like speaking math. I don't often get that when I'm. So what we're in the process now. What we've gotten for feedback from fire department, which is good feedback, they'd like us to incorporate the ability for vehicles to access behind the buildings, and we've incorporated that into the plans. You haven't seen them yet because we're getting feedback from your team, life safety, engineering, and we're making sure that the plans that you get when we respond to all the comments we've received thus far are comprehensive. But we've incorporated that into the design. So life safety is going to have access behind the buildings. We're going to have access on parcel 6. You'll see them on the side and rear of that as well. We're going to design that for their emergency response vehicles, predominantly ladder truck. We've got utility comments in there, which we're incorporating into the plans, and all of that will be distributed to the board in an updated set of plans when we receive all the comments and responded to them. I can get into as much or as little detail as you may think is appropriate, but what I often like to do is get it to you for questions, and I'm sure you have some already. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I want to point out one thing about the parking, and part of this is the commercial next door has an easement, a non-exclusive easement for parking, approximately 49 spaces in that area. I believe Mr. Mello is here, who owns that property. We've had some good discussions with him about it. And what we're trying to do, quite frankly, is to make our parking comply without using those as part of the calculation, even though we can because they're non-exclusive. But what we're trying to do is make sure that the commercial activity along the road, the two parcels or two or three parcels that are there, certainly is allowed and is able to gain the advantage of that easement right for parking if needed. So I just want to point it out. We're trying to be very sensitive to that so that we don't run into a parking problem downstream when there's further development of those sites. Thank you.
Thank you for that bit. Questions or comments by members of the board? Nelson?
Got a bunch of questions. Let's start with Attorney Michael's comments right now. You're saying there's already a parking easement on this property.
Yeah.
Is that the extra parking for the cinema that we're talking about?
I'll
No,
show you. So
no.
if you're looking at.
No, it's for
the screen-
D'Angelo's and the store next
answer
door.
is no. The cinema parking is over in what I'll call Lot 8, which is
Yeah.
beyond.
Further north.
That's not part of this, Nelson.
No. Okay.
There is an easement on that lot, but it's nothing to do with us.
Nothing to do with
Nothing.
this. Okay.
Nothing.
So the parking easement that you're referring to, if you look at the screen, you can see my cursor. There are 59 spaces roughly in this location
there.
here.
Yeah.
And those spaces are in what's referred to as a non-exclusive easement, so they're the ability to be shared. The idea behind us increasing the parking count on this property is to still maintain a parking count that complies with your requirements without the use of those spaces, so that those spaces wouldn't be compromised or there's still the ability to be shared with the neighboring use.
And the neighboring use is concerned, and we share that. We want the site to work. We want things to work there. We expect there may be some enhanced commercial activity over a period of time, and that's an important component is parking so that people aren't on the road or doing something crazy in that area. So we're trying to be sensitive about it and practical about it, and I believe that we're going to do that.
Okay. So now let's jump back to parcel 6.
Go ahead.
And that you said, how many parking spaces do you show there in that little sketch?
Well, some of them are underground, but
Right,
What?
so those buildings have approximately 30 spaces underground in a garage, and then on the surface there's about 60 spaces. So we have about 120 spaces, and right now we're proposing 88 units on that side.
Okay. So how many are you short? You're coming up short is what you're saying.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the calculation for that parcel by itself, based on bedrooms, is gonna be somewhere in around 200 spaces,
Yeah.
which would put the ratio in the high twos, mid twos.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm not happy about that, just for the record.
So you said 88 units or 88 bedrooms over on that
88,
side?
88 units. The bedroom mix in there would be, predominantly in those smaller buildings, you're gonna see more of the single bedroom units. We would have the ability, we'd have a 1-to-1, just over a one space per bedroom ratio on parcel 6.
Okay.
and I've spoken to my clients in response to Nelson's last comment that he wasn't happy about it, that we're going to be taking a close look at that area to do our best to enhance the parking there, Nelson. I've already indicated that that would trouble members of this board. Let's leave it at that. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the for the comment.
I
As well.
don't want to leave it dangling.
No, okay, good.
We're giving you the numbers, but
Yeah.
we're sensitive to what the
Yeah.
thinking might be.
Yeah. Okay, the other questions I had to do with what you were saying about the sewer. I didn't quite get it. There's 2 sewer lines servicing this Continental Boulevard area. Is that not correct?
So I'll show you. I'll actually go.
One
to
of
you.
them,
I think a picture would be more appropriate. Let me just walk you through that here. So we are right here. Okay. So there is a primary sewer that services not only this property. If you can follow my cursor, see where my cursor is going here, like
I'm
this.
looking for- oh, yeah, I see it. Okay,
see
there
that?
you go. Yeah.
Then it comes down like this,
Uh-huh.
and then it comes across the property, and it
Uh-huh.
goes up over here. So what
Then-
happens
Then where
is,
does it go?
so that's I will go to the aha moment. So there, the facility next to us, located to our south,
Yeah.
is connected into that primary trunk line.
Uh-huh.
The residences that are far up there to our west
Mm-hmm.
come across, that line comes, you can see it just right here, comes under Natticook Brook. All right? This line, this primary trunk line traverses our site.
I've lost you. Oh,
right.
okay,
So it's-
okay, there it is. I
So,
see it.
so the residents to the west kind of come down.
Yeah,
The use that's to our south connects into this trunk line. This trunk line goes from left to right across the plan,
Uh-huh.
continues over to here, right?
yeah,
And then as you go to the next plan, it continues and converges right about in here. All right, so you can see this line is coming down from the neighbors.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that sanitary line goes under the Effie Everett Turnpike and across the
Okay.
road,
That's the one they're talking about relocating.
potentially. And we've been
It
talking
was-
to your team about that.
Just earlier today, we heard that they're gonna want to relocate that line.
We've been talking to the Department of Public Works and Sewer Department about that. So on site, we think, and they're confident we can maintain our line. There may be some relocating as it goes under
Yeah.
the highway or in Executive Park Drive.
Yeah.
Our intent is to connect into the main lateral that's located on our property.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted you to be aware of this, of what we were talking about earlier today, because it could affect it.
Yep,
You know,
and it's
And
actually
where's the
been,
pumping station from here? He mentioned a pumping station was upstream of this.
your sewer department is considering a pumping station, and we've been talking to them because they've asked us if there was the ability to locate that on our property. So we've been working with them. They've been great to work with. They've been wholly transparent about what their plans are. So
Yeah.
we've made provisions for that if and when that project were to happen.
Okay, well, everybody's talking to everybody. That's, at
Yes,
this
sir.
stage, that's what I wanted to be sure of.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I had right at the moment, Bob, on
Thank
what's
you,
been
Nelson.
said so far.
Other members? If not, I'll put my couple of cents in there if nobody else does.
Go ahead.
Okay, so go back to the diagram that had parcel 4 and parcel 6 kind of both in there.
Yep.
I think if you're separating them, and I know we're treating it as one site plan, even though I think even you said that they maybe are kind of distinct from each other. They are kind of separate from each other from an amenities standpoint. All the people that are living on parcel 6 aren't really going to feel connected to that clubhouse or that exercise room and that sort of thing. And I think that that may be something you have to consider, whether there's some place over on 6 where you can do something for those folks, because otherwise they're really just they're not part of the development.
Yeah.
They're just in a couple of apartment buildings off by themselves. I like that there's some pedestrian interconnection between the two. I'd like it if the pedestrian interconnection was internal to the parcel, so that it wasn't like people have to go straight out to the road and walk the longest possible way to get over there to get the connection to what's essentially part of their own apartment complex. So think about those kinds of things. I think it's kind of hard to tell in a site plan like this, but it seems to me if you were standing on the street, the first thing that you'd see is a lot of parking lot. And I know we're just talking about the number of spaces and whether there's enough, and maybe there needs to be more, but green space and breaking up that parking or putting some behind the buildings.
So, so
This is a decent we've had some architects working on this, and this is kind of an architectural rendering based upon what we more or less have before you now of this. I know looking at a flat plan doesn't kind of give you the
No, that's why I was
perspective.
mentioning. Thank you for
That's
that.
why we kind of brought this along, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're kind of looking at. And we think that, part of the submission will include a landscape plan. We could certainly take you through that in terms of how we propose to do it. And I've certainly written down the notes about the pedestrian interconnect versus along the roadway. I understand what the comment is. We'll take a look at that. We've got wetlands in those areas, so we're
I know
we're
it's not going to be
constrained
easy.
Yeah.
a little bit by our environmental concerns and the topographic concerns, but we'll certainly take another look at that.
No, but if you can get the people from parcel 6 over to parcel 4, then you don't have to build duplicate amenities
I
for the
agree.
people
No,
over
I-
on
of
this
course.
side. The parking is going to be a bit of a challenge, both because of the numbers you're talking about, and I think there's been some comments in the community about a different complex saying where they're short on parking, and they're saying 2 per 2-bedroom apartment really isn't working out very well. We need more. And it's kind of the same debate you're having with kind of the numbers and how they work out.
Well, as I said, on 4, as Austin's pointed out, we believe we're going to meet. We're going to. I hate to. I'm trying not to
No, I get it.
separate this, but you get it. 4,
Well,
we're not only are we going to meet it, we're going to meet it, and there's still 49 non-exclusive spaces that we're trying
Yeah.
to stay away from. So we're doing our level best to meet.
I think your approach is exactly right
You know.
in terms of taking a look at 4, because frankly, if I lived in 6, I'm not going to park on 4.
Yeah, you're not. I know
mean,
that. You're not
Those
gonna do
spaces
that.
are really just for 4.
And we're going to be taking a look at 6, as I mentioned to Mr. Disco.
Just to add more difficulty to the parking thing, think about how far someone has to walk to get from wherever they had to park into their building and up. And there's a couple of areas. I think when you look at the site plan, some of the stuff to the left of the page, to the left of your furthest building, you start to get a little remote where somebody's, that's like parking out at Walmart in the part where they put the campers, and getting into your house. It's a good walk. It's a long way to go. There isn't an easy solution to say, break up the parking so it's not right in front and so visible, but I don't want it too far away, but I want enough of it, but not too much of it. And don't pave the world.
It's a catch-22, no matter how you
It's a complicated problem. When it comes to some of the commercial retail businesses, I'm usually on this side of granting waivers because I don't want to pave the world, and I think parking lots don't look good. But where people live, they don't have a choice of whether they're going to go there or not. They live there. They got to go there.
Right.
So it's a tough problem to think about. Landscaping and that rendering that you showed with kind of what the street view looked like, I think looked pretty good.
And that's actually fairly accurate too. We've worked with the architectural team, Market Square, to create this rendering. We have our 3D model too, so this thing's been built sensitive to grading, and then the landscaping is reasonably accurate in terms of what our plan has been designed for too.
And I wouldn't say that a comment like the one I'm about to make is mandatory, but when you look at 6 and the two buildings are squared up to each other perfectly, that's not a little bit of variation in that with little landscaping around them so that they're not, lined up like soldiers, could make it look a little bit better too. But again, that's not necessarily something that makes it a mandatory. Think about the visuals. Think about what it's like to be there and go there. The other thing that I wanted to comment on was what you've offered up for us with the measurements of the traffic counts from the other development. Thank you for doing this. I think it's very, very helpful to do it. I'm surprised that the numbers came out the way that they did, where there's where the estimated trip generation numbers are as conservative as they are compared to what happens in real life. It gives me a lot of confidence when we talk about what could happen based on improving the traffic lights to make some room for some more traffic based on how many we're actually going to insert into this. I know that everywhere that I go where I talk to people in the community, they hear 280 apartments and they start to multiply the number of cars and they say we'll have 2 or 3 cars per unit. We'll have 500 or 750 people coming out of there at 7 a.m. all together at the same time. And the predictions have never shown that. And it's still a tough thing for everybody to get their mind around, but actually going somewhere where there's not just similar, this is bigger. This is a bigger development by a substantial amount, and measuring it and counting it and saying, look, my predictions are accurate and good numbers. That was tremendously helpful to me.
Thank you.
So that I know that one of the things that I'll ask Alistair to speak about is you guys weren't here before us at our last meeting, but he mentioned it. He actually went to go look at one of the peer-to-peer sites in Massachusetts that was suggested to us. And
all I did is I went and looked at it, and of course it worked perfectly while I was there, apart from one particular episode. But it's difficult to say it's better than what it was because I couldn't see what it was before you put the peer-to-peer system in. The only thing I would offer you is during the period I was there, and I was there in the rush hour, two gentlemen decided to run a red light. And when that happened, the system sort of hiccuped pretty badly. And nothing happened for a sort of time while it sort of sorted itself out. Now, I'm not saying that that's something that should be held against you, but it did happen. Running a red light blocked the intersection. I know nobody should do it, but if you understand people in Massachusetts, and even people in Merrimack, by the way, they do run red lights. So all I'm cautioning in is that I don't know how you get over it. And I mean, there isn't, except, of course, getting rid of traffic lights and putting in roundabouts, but we won't go into that now. You've all heard me. But I do say that when I watched the peer-to-peer at the site, it worked very well, apart from that one instance. What it was like before, of course, is hard for me to judge. But certainly, I have to say, your peer-to-peer system does appear to work.
And the state is very anxious to work, has been very anxious to work with us on this, and we're trying to get a letter from them, I will tell you that.
Well,
But they're
more-
high on it.
I think if the state wants to get involved and are going to sort of keep a close eye on it, I'm even more encouraged. So all I can, give you a pat on the head and say, yes, the peer-to-peer system does work, and you'd get my support on it.
Thank you.
And I think that information plus, frankly, to me, these traffic counts, and to use a sports metaphor, this is a home run, better numbers than what I thought would come out of going to measure a place. I'm intrigued about the idea of the cafe as a part of your amenities. Are you thinking like a commercial establishment that's actually selling food, or just something that's available for parties for people that want to use it, or
Probably
what do you
small-
What do you think?
It's intended to be a private amenity for this. And by cafe, it's probably more of the internet cafe with coffee and maybe like croissant or donuts or something, but they're not necessarily for sale to the public. It's more of that private amenity for the residents of the facility.
Okay.
So So what you're saying is you'd have to have a sort of site pass to get in.
Yeah, I imagine there's going to be some kind of carded entry to that. You're a resident, you have the ability to access that and use it.
Okay.
Okay. And it would have kind of a gym thing going on?
Yeah, you have treadmills or something to that effect.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Adam Wagner with Market Square Architects. Part of the programming on the clubhouse piece, there are two parts to it. One is a cyber cafe that's going to be an amenity to the residents that can come, use a computer, grab a cup of coffee. But it's really for the folks that live within this complex. Within the clubhouse, we'll also have a larger community room so that if you want to have a bridal shower, but you can't fit everyone into your apartment, you can rent out that facility and have a larger party within that building. So those are the two primary functions of that community clubhouse.
But for residents only.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then the kind of a fitness gym, is that part of that there too, or is that kind of really a small footprint, or?
No, that is also within that community clubhouse. Typically, the fitness center would have 3 or 4 treadmills, 3 or 4 stairmasters, a couple of rowing machines. It's not a full-fledged commercial gym as you would expect, but something that the residents can go work out as part of their tenant agreement.
Okay. Remind me again, when you for the overall complex, the mix of 1 and 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom units?
It's going to be predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom units. I bet you the balance is going to be heavy on the 1 unit. I can get you more of a distribution.
What does your calculations predict for number of school-age kids?
I don't know that offhand.
Okay. It does change quite a bit based on the number of bedrooms, where 1 certainly has very, very few, if any,
Right.
and 2s have some, and 3s have more.
To put that in context, and then don't quote me on the record, right? I believe the unit or the bedroom distribution for parcel 4, there's 192 units there with approximately 260 bedrooms. So if you're looking at that, it's probably
1.25.
Yeah, 1.25. So heavy on the 1 bedrooms, not as many 2 bedroom units there.
Okay. So I can tell by that much, and I think you gave similar numbers on parcel 6, you're not going to have a ton of school-age kids in here.
Don't anticipate that. You're not going to have 3 bedroom units here. It's going to be predominantly
Any
1 and
play
2.
area amenities or things that you've thought ahead of for the kids, or do you just don't think you're not going to have that many kids?
I don't anticipate having that many kids. And you say play area, you're referring to like out exterior areas. We haven't incorporated any specific like a playground amenity in here, but we're sensitive to that. And to your point about the landscaping, we've graded out this to be sensitive so it's flat. It doesn't look like it's been terraformed with engineering 3-to-1 slopes. We've been sensitive to that, so it has that feel. Perhaps we could work on incorporating something like that if
let the need drive it. I mean, don't build it if you think you're going to have 4 kids in the whole place. But if you're going to have a significant number.
The discussion has been, we don't anticipate a lot of children in this particular complex, its design, its location, which is why we have not gotten into that type of outdoor amenity. We just don't think it's, anything's possible. How many things have you seen in some places they build a tennis court and nobody uses it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's on our radar scope, but way to the left,
Yeah.
okay?
So all of these units are rental apartments. There aren't any condos or ownership for these?
No,
Correct.
rental
Um,
units.
What's the target rental rate? Or-
I don't know.
How much are you willing to pay?
Right.
Yeah, I got a house. I'm all set.
$400 a month.
I think you can move into Woodsbridge, but
We-
market rate,
Market rate.
yeah.
we have a-
Other comments or questions by? members
No,
of the
I'm
board?
personally looking forward to seeing the full proposal on January the 2nd, I think it is.
Is there other information that you wanted to make sure you got feedback from us on about this?
No, I'm pleased with the discussion, thank you. And I think that you've helped us. Collectively, you've helped us, I think, pointed us in some directions that we need to take a close look at, and we will.
I do want to give the public a chance to weigh in,
Thank
and you'll hear their comments, be able to respond to them, or at least take them into account as
Thank
you
you.
move forward. And we will also perhaps amplify or echo some of the things we hear from the public
Thank you.
from our own perspectives. So, give us a second to do that. And okay, abutters and citizens who wish to weigh in and offer the board something to consider tonight.
Is he a citizen now?
Mhm.
Yes.
Hello, Dan Ricker, 12 Merrill Road, citizen, Merrimack, I guess is a good way to describe it. Just one thing I just want to touch base on. Gentleman who was sitting here was talking a lot about equations and engineering and all those things. And when we talk about traffic, how the equations were used to generate the numbers, right? Yet they're asking for a waiver for parking spaces that are also generated by math. So you can't have one, you can't have the other. That's the only thing I'm saying. I just feel like if you're going to use that argument for traffic, you need to use that argument for parking spaces. And if you give me a second, I do have a video of traffic if you want to see it. It's up
Of
to
the
you.
traffic in the area?
Yeah.
I mean, I won't cut off your testimony. You can offer whatever you want, but we've all been there.
Well, I mean, it's. I think it's important to see. I mean, I understand that we've all seen it, but it was last Thursday. 0.2 miles took over 7 minutes and 39 seconds in a non-weather related incident. I mean, I moved it forward to fast forward a little bit, so it only takes a minute and a half, but it's something to see.
If it's a minute and a half, let's see it. Absolutely. One of the things, though, I want you to think about and consider, though, is if we offer him a waiver to reduce parking, that also reduces the cars that are out that could come and go because there's less of them in there.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, I just need that plug. That's all. Not just
I commend you for doing all the work of putting together a video and going out and measuring and taking this.
I mean, I understand the what you're saying, but we talk about, if you want us to believe that the math is correct, and I agree with you. I think that the study was done correctly, and the numbers were very transparent to what exactly is happening. So it is accurate, but then again, there's a reason why there's 1.2 or 1.5 parking spaces per.
Just because we made up that formula.
I feel
It's
like,
in our
if we're gonna use that as an argument, then it's an argument. It's there in the rules.
Yep, it is.
Okay.
No question.
All right, so here it is. So I sped this up. It's going to take 2 minutes.
No problem.
So
Thank you for doing this. I mean,
where
you're
I
really
s-
going the
oh,
extra
is it?
mile
Hold on.
for
It's not on.
making sure you can
No, it's
show us
not.
what you want us to
Oh
see.
shoot! Hold on.
Well, I have the same thing.
Not sure why that's not coming up. There we go. So right now, I'm standing on the overpass off exit 11.
So
Halfway.
you're still on the turnpike?
Yeah, so I just exited exit 11, heading south. Here's the.
Okay, I know where you're at. I
Okay,
gotcha.
you got me?
I mean, does everybody else? Because it's not just me.
Yeah.
All right.
Does your thing have like a full screen? Oh, there, it's a little bit better.
Okay, here we go.
So I sped it up, obviously, so.
No, thank you for that.
So here we go. There's one stop. Here's two stops. Obviously, we can see the traffic here is all the way backed up right to here. That guy jumps the curb. We're still doing it. Red light, green light. Now I'm actually heading. So look at all the traffic backed up on this road, stacking up all the way past the red light. I mean, this is a random. This is last Thursday. Obviously, there's no rain. There's no snow.
What time of day?
This happens 1 out of 5, at least once, if not twice a week.
Yeah, and what time of day did you film this, Dan?
This is 5:39 p.m.
Okay.
So here's a green light, yellow light. So this light will change 3 times before I even get there. Now, maybe this new peer-to-peer system will help this, but this is reality. And again, that was too quick, but sorry. Just if you look over here, look how far back it's stacked up down exit 11. You can see the headlights. I mean, you got 2 cars trying to make a right-hand turn right here. You got this guy blocking the road here. And then there's all the backed up all the way past to where I started. And then it's going to take another 2 lights for me to get through. And then this is the money shot coming up about how people block it. So basically, you know, if math tells you what it's going to tell you, that not everybody's going to leave at the same time, people are getting home at the same time.
Yeah. We'll have to take a look at the way the traffic counts work.
And so here's the green light, blocked. Now you have to look at the cars coming left, and then now I was able to go through. And I'm still not there yet. So total time to travel, 0.2 miles, 7 minutes, 38 seconds, 39 seconds. So, okay.
Thank you for showing that. That was.
I just think, it's hard. We all have done it, but that's what it looked like. And it would just happen to be driving home one day. Some days I get there and it's a non-issue. Some days it takes me 3 minutes. Some days it doesn't. Some days it takes me over 7. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think what Dan has done is it proves the point that, of course, quite a lot of the problems there were people stepping off or blocking the road or preventing the normal flow of traffic because they leap. And this is what I saw when I went to the site. If somebody jumps a light or blocks the road, then things go wrong. And it's the same all over the place, which is why traffic lights don't work. Because people are in a hurry to go through them, they'll run reds, they don't use common sense. I wished I did spend some time thinking about it. Could I work out how to draw 2 roundabouts and got rid of all these traffic lights? And I can't. So there isn't, without demolishing perhaps a couple of buildings, which I'd probably like to knock down. But frankly, you're dealing with human beings who are in a hurry to get home, who block the traffic, who don't think about it. The only way to do it is you have a big area and you paint yellow stripes on it. And there are places in Massachusetts when they do this with cameras. And they have a continuous run of what's going on at that intersection. And anybody who stops there gets a ticket. And that's the only way you ever stop people being idiots. We don't allow cameras to do that in New Hampshire.
Yeah. It's not always cameras. You can do it live too. When I was not that we're New York City, but I was in New York City, and they have signs by all the intersections that say "Don't block the box." That's their phrase.
Yes.
And if you block the box, there's a sign, and I don't remember whether it was either 200 or 1,000. It was a crazy high fine if you put yourself in the box when the light turned red, and got caught doing it. I don't know that we've got a law in New Hampshire about lingering in a light or blocking an intersection like that. One of the things that I think was really clear in Dan's video is the lights themselves, because they're not synchronized, are contributing to and causing this.
Yeah.
And the light that's by D'Angelo's is red when the light at Continental is green, and so the cars can't do what they're supposed to do, which is go, because the other intersection. And then the one at the northbound ramps for the turnpike is backing up traffic down Greeley Street or Continental Boulevard into the same intersection, and those cars that you had to drive around at the very end there were exactly that. Those were people stacked back from the previous intersection. It's just, you know,
It's
a
driving.
design
It's
failure
driving
that's-
through lights and without seeing your way clear to get away from the intersection, and people doing it all the time.
And frankly, well, the first time we met and talked about this, some of the things I said is all the people stuck in traffic should be angry today, because the reason those lights work that way is because they're not synchronized. The reason they're not synchronized is because nobody got off their chair and synchronized them. And so we're in traffic today that's absolutely a man-made disaster, but it's man-made. Anyway, Dan, thank you very much for that. Are there other citizens or abutters who wish to weigh in?
Try the button again, see if it comes up
There you
brighter.
go. Is it on now?
It is. I think I can hear you over the
Just,
speaker.
Okay.
yeah, point it in.
My name is Randy Bourgeois. I'm in Butter, 23 Bigwood Drive. I'm directly behind this parcel number 4, is it? I've got a lot of issues with these site drawings. I basically went through them. That's my business. I work for a general contractor, do site work, buildings. I see a lot of issues with these site drawings. I'm not going to bring them up tonight because the gentleman that was sitting here actually said that there was a new site plan that's going to be brought in at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to get a
Yeah,
chance to.
I can help you with at least setting the stage for those kinds of comments. Because they're in a conceptual phase, they've done some of these things to lay out for us an idea of those things, but they haven't necessarily untangled all the engineering problems that are related to drainage or site distances and all those kinds of things that they may have something that they've put on paper now, but all of it is subject to change as they move forward and go through the process. So that's why we haven't been asking them questions about, you know, flow rates and drainage swales and lighting plans and all those kinds of things, because all of those things are engineering tasks and problems that come later.
Correct. Yeah, these are basically almost conceptual at some point.
No, that's exactly what they are. It's conceptual.
I know they were scared to tell you about the required traffic or vehicle count for this place, and it's 840. It's on the drawing.
Why were they scared? I don't get what you're saying.
The
I don't
parking
think that they-
spaces, the parking spaces that's required from the town
Yeah.
is 840.
Mhm.
They're going to look for a waiver for 567 parking spaces.
I don't know what the number is that they're going to ask for, but
Well,
the way
I'm-
that the math works isn't
I'm just saying
a
that
secret.
the analysis here on these drawings, whether it shows up on the other set, is, I have no idea.
So we do receive all of the information about what's required and what they're requesting. Usually it does appear on a drawing, but even if it doesn't, it appears in writing somewhere before us.
Okay.
They don't. It isn't kept out of our,
Yeah, like I
out of our
said, I
sight.
just went through these because this is what I do, and I noticed a few hiccups here and there, so I made myself some notes.
No, go ahead, please.
But I'm not going to bring them up tonight. I'll just wait till the next set of drawings comes out and look at those.
Is there
see if
anything
we-
from a conceptual stage where you think that fit that? I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't want to cut you off if you want to go through the technical things. I don't cut off anybody's testimony. But if you've got things that are focused on specific technical, you know, what's the light going to be, and are they going to have the right covers on? You know, make sure
No,
that-
I'm not. No, I'm not
those kinds of
concerned with
things
the
are
lighting
technical.
whatsoever. I looked at the lumens layout that was
Okay.
dispersed.
And I wouldn't. I was just an example. Any part of it. The technical bits, I agree with you that waiting to see what their actual final or their next iteration is going to be more meaningful for you than and us.
Yeah,
than-
then if that's, obviously that's what they want to build, then I'll just tear into it after that.
Are there some conceptual things that are sort of the big picture?
I just see a lot of things, as far as sidewalks and to parcel 6, there's no sidewalks for the handicapped to actually exit the property unless they are out into the roadway. I noticed on the utilities, there's a requirement of depth on the sewer and water. I don't think they're going to get it with the bridge that they have to build across that section of stream right there. The buffer, the 100-foot buffer, doesn't show up on some of the drawings.
That's a good conceptual thing to bring up. In which area do you think that they're within 100 feet, or they've got structures within a 100-foot buffer?
Well, I noticed on the clearing drawings where they plan to clear the lot, they're basically staying within that 100-foot buffer, but when you start to go to the grading drawings, now they're cutting into a little bit, they're going to put a slope on the backside of the building. Now, just hearing tonight that the fire department wants access around that building, are they going to pull that building forward to get a road around it now? Or are they going to cut into the backside of that property and have to put a retaining wall in? Things of that nature. I just see hiccups. So
Those are important. So working out the road and the position of the building and retaining walls are all possibilities in terms of acceptable engineering solutions.
Mhm.
And the 100-foot buffer is something that's it's worthwhile to think about and talk about a little bit. Ultimately, they got to have a 100-foot buffer where there's no structures and things in there.
Well,
during construction, how is that buffer? Is it woods? Is it
the buffer runs
landscaped?
right along this line right here?
Uh-huh.
And you can see where they're actually cutting into the backside of that hill, so
Yep.
they can get their grades down to put in some drainage structures back here, and also the transformers. This little hiccup right here actually cuts into the 40-foot setback,
Okay.
which is another concern.
It's the wetland setback?
No, it's not a wetland, it's just a
It's
40-foot.
just the rear-
Oh, the rear lot line
Rear
setback.
yard
But
setback.
it's grading.
Yeah, grading is permitted to be within those setbacks, as would a driveway.
Also
As far as
into
lot
the-
line
into the
setbacks.
buffer also.
What's that?
Also into the buffer, the 100-foot buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as there's no building structure there.
Correct. That's what I assumed. I'm just concerned about taking all those trees out.
Well-
And what if there could be some kind of concessions on there for planting some trees or
Well, it's not
They
uncommon for
haven't
us to
shown the
talk with
landscape
folks about.
plan yet, so.
giant thujas?
It's not uncommon for us to talk to folks about what they're going to plant in a buffer, or do they put a berm in there, or do they put in some evergreen trees, or do some things to make sure that the buffer is as effective as possible. We've also had applications where we've redirected the way the traffic flows so that headlights don't get directed across a buffer or into a buffer, or that they've got to put up hedges or some sort of obstacle to keep headlights from doing it. So that's a good point to keep an eye on and to talk about,
Yeah.
and that is something that the planning board would act on.
Now, the other hiccup, obviously, I need to find out about is I got to go back to the not the planning board.
Community development.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission,
Conservation.
Community Development, Zoning
Well,
Board.
In the bylaws, it says that you can, you gave them a variance of 13.3 units per acre.
Okay, we
build-
didn't do that.
build
That's the
the
zoning
zoning
board.
board did
Right.
We don't do
There's
variances.
Right. So I think I need to go back to them to find out why they let this waterway and wetlands kind of slide through. It wasn't calculated out of the footprint.
It certainly is a matter before them. I don't know whether there's a public forum where you can kind of raise that issue, but from our standpoint, we're as stuck with it as you are.
Right.
And, maybe we're each individually of our own mind whether we would have done the same thing, but we have no more authority than you do to contradict the zoning board.
understand.
So,
Right, there's plenty other things on here I'm just not going to bring up. I'd like to see the other set of drawings.
thank you, Rainey.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? Sure. Okay. We'll close the public hearing and invite the applicant to come back forward. Yeah, you may feel free to respond to those or just take some notes and incorporate it into your thought process going forward, whatever you like.
Yeah, I've taken some notes to take a look at it, and I don't think there's much more to be said about the traffic in a global sense. We all know the issue out there. When it's no surprise to us, and we firmly believe, and our studies show, and our facts show, the facts, that we believe the improvements we are going to make, the adjustments that we're going to make, will make it better there. Is it going to solve everything? No, it won't solve everything. We all know that. But at some point, we all have to move ahead, and we're going to move ahead and do our best to deal with this, and we expect that there will be an improvement to that situation. It certainly won't be worse. That's all we've beaten this to death a bit. I'm not going to go any further. Regarding the drawings, I think I'll turn that over to Austin. We know that there's a few things that need to be looked at. We're aware of that. We've admitted that to you tonight regarding our parking, regarding those issues. I want you to just address the parking briefly. Is there some number on the plan?
Sure. When we provided these plans initially, the architect was in the process of refining and completing the building program. So we were conservative in the number of bedrooms that we assumed, just so that we had a higher number in the calculation. Now that we have the plans, they're put together, there's a much lower bedroom count than we were expecting, which in turn is going to lower the required parking significantly. So we're somewhere in the mid 500 range for provided parking as you look at the project whole, and we're going to have required parking might be somewhere in the low to mid 600 number. So there was number 840 is on the plan, but that was based on a far more conservative bedroom count. Our bedroom count is significantly reduced. As I've mentioned previously, we're looking more at the heavy mix is going to be in the one bedroom area, and we're going to have some two mixed in there. So that number comes down significantly, which means in turn the parking comes down significantly. So our ratio, we're going to be much closer to what's required.
So a formula that says you need roughly in the 600s and you've got something in the 500s says you're going to get north of 80% of what the formula says.
Yes, sir.
And you're going to be looking for a variance that's somewhere in the 15 to 20%.
A waiver.
Yeah, waiver. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now I'm the one tripping over the words. Sorry, apologize to
I've used those
the
interchangeably.
zoning board and everybody else.
And we'll certainly take a look at the sidewalks and any encroachments. We can't improperly encroach. We're certainly aware of that. CLD is looking at this. We're interested in getting their comments so we can incorporate their thoughts, if you will, into the plans. That's common procedure. So I don't think I need to say any more about that. We understand we've got to comply appropriately with the site regulations and so forth. I mean, that's a given.
You've talked before about having sidewalks run all the way down to the movie theater, across the front of the road, and some internal walkways, some connections between what you're calling parcel 4 and parcel 6.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look closely enough at the plan to see what the gentleman was speaking of in terms of being able to come from the buildings at either 4 or 6 and get to the sidewalk out front, or to leave the parcel. But I assume that you'll have some plan for that doesn't put them in the parking lot.
That's correct.
That's correct.
The idea of parcel 4 is going to have the sidewalks in front of the building along parking areas to get people off the driveways and parking spaces and be able to walk amongst the property. In parcel 6, there'll be sidewalk connectivity that comes down the driveway and provides you into the primary sidewalk artery, which is going to be running along Executive Park Drive. I heard feedback this evening looking at sidewalk connectivity amongst the properties more interior. I'll see if we can do that. As I noted before, it's kind of a challenged property in terms of topography and wetlands. So if there's an opportunity to do that and it's not recreating some kind of eighth wonder of the world, then we'll entertain that. If we can't, then we'll still provide that connectivity amongst the properties through the sidewalk network on Executive Park Drive.
Excellent, thank you. Tom?
You had mentioned that the fire department or public safety wanted access to the backs of the buildings, and that was brought up by comments as well. And I was curious, I can't see where you're going to be able to get those on there the way this is laid out today, and so I don't know how much changes as far as where the buildings are, where the grades are, where the brook is, and things like that are coming. That's why this is very conceptual, in my opinion, as to exactly how you're going to make all that happen.
So we've given that a lot of thought, and I have it worked out. I haven't updated the plans wholly yet because I just want to make sure everybody that has a vested interest in this, in particular fire, is in agreement with how we're doing this, and so we've had a good meeting with them. I'm sliding the buildings forward a little bit. I had pulled them forward. Everybody who's familiar with that property know that it drops off significantly on the back.
Exactly.
And so we were very sensitive to that. We had the buildings pulled forward of that kind of topographic break initially. I pulled them forward a little bit more, and it allowed me to accommodate a drive in the rear along the part of the property that's flat. Now, the buildings, is the way they're set up. You're going to come in from the property on Executive Park Drive. You're going to see the building's going to look all flat. Those garage access driveways allow us to gently slope and get under the building. Mm-hmm. We can use those to get emergency response personnel behind the building as well. Using that topography to our advantage, they can kind of use that driveway to get out back behind the building. It's all flat. They can traverse behind those buildings and then come out on the other side, and they're all at one elevation. So I've worked it out. I haven't drawn it yet, but I know the math works. And
so
I'm going
are
to
you looking at a 5-story elevation on the backside there?
On the backside, you'll be looking underneath. It's what's called a podium. So you'll see underneath. You'll see the parking garage for the vehicles, and then you'll see the building on top of that. So it'll be a 4-story structure with the parking underneath.
About half a story up for the first story, or
correct.
Something
And
like
if you were on Executive Park looking at it, it would look like a 4-story residential
Right.
building.
But
Yep.
if that fire truck gets in the backside and tries to reach up to the 4th floor, they're actually reaching up 4.5 floors or more.
Correct, and that's so we've worked it out with fire in terms of what spacing they needed for the proper angle on ladders and stuff, and what they've told us is what we've incorporated into the updated set that we're working on right now.
Okay. And realizing that brook is a very sensitive waterway as far as feeding into Horseshoe Pond and then ultimately down to the Merrimack River, we want to be very careful about any drainage or any whatever happens that's going to get off into that brook. And
absolutely.
And so that whole drainage issue in there is going to be very sensitive and concerning.
Of course, we're very much aware and sensitive to it.
I understand that. I'm just kind of
nope. I appreciate that
amplifying
feedback.
That, just to agree with what you said earlier.
Yep, absolutely. That's one of our top priorities when we're designing the stormwater system.
Okay, thank you.
The same is going to apply to the landscaping system so that it's not highly dependent on irrigation and fertilizer, because certainly fertilizer is going to end up washing in the brook and
that can't happen.
What was it?
That cannot happen.
Yeah, that can't happen.
Much phosphorus in the waterway as it is now.
Drought tolerant, and they're not going to. They're going to be hardy species that don't require a lot of that, artificial care, so to speak.
And it helps that you're a rental building where there's one management company controlling the property and not 280 condo owners who all want to do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
It does. You're probably also in an area where you're going to have limited salt and de-icing availability in your parking lot, so you have to think about and make sure that you can manage that situation with sand only or plows and shovels.
Mm-hmm.
Same reasons.
It's probably not our business, but who is it that's looking at the need for 200 one-bedroom apartments and stuff like that? I mean, given your project here and another project that's been mentioned across the street, almost in the exact same geographic region, but across the street for another anywhere from 50 to 80 units and stuff like that. Is there truly a need understood and calculatable as far as numbers of one-bedroom apartments is concerned?
I think the short answer to that question is yes, and we didn't just magically appear here. There's been a lot of work done to get to this point. So the first step in the process is establishing a need for it, and there are people who are spending a lot of dollars for Greg and I to be sitting here. And in order for us to do that, they know that there's an interest and a need in the market to do that, done their homework, and that's been going on for a year, 2 years to get to here. And now that we know that that's a viable opportunity and the math works, so to speak, it's allowed us to engage in this part of the process.
And do they predict in that study the direction those people are going? Where are they working? Are they going down to Massachusetts? Or are they working locally in Nashua and Manchester? Or
so that's the part where that's kind of getting inside the matrix. I don't have the keys to that door. I just know that I can make water go downhill, and that they're telling me it's a viable project.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the honest answer.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm just oftentimes amazed when I look at the growth this town's gone through, and then suddenly to add in the unit up in the north part of town that's trying to add in 200 or more units and things like that is just trying to see where that growth is going when they talk about a lot of the kids, the millennials and whatnot moving out of the area because they are tired of the snow and they can find jobs down in the south or further south. Just contemplating that kind of growth in this region that would support that is always an issue or a concern of mine, especially on the town council, and how do we provide services for that kind of expansion and things of that nature.
Sure.
So, my comment or idea along the same lines didn't really have anything specific to do with how these guys planned out theirs and did their study and came up with some things, but we know from when we did our master plan that the effort to recruit employers like Fidelity or what's the new name for Atrium Medical?
Maquette.
They're always looking to go to places where they can find employees and young people that have graduated recently, and maybe they're single or maybe they're just married, and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments are kind of that target housing situation for them. And so maybe the jobs for those people aren't here yet. Maybe this helps to attract a company. I'm sure these guys aren't in the business of trying to attract a company, but as we've designed our master plan and created the possibilities for developments like this, that's what it was for in the master plan, was to think, if you want the jobs, you got to have the housing. If you want the housing, you got to have the jobs, and all of these things kind of relate to each other in one way or another. And walkable communities and sidewalks and bike lanes and all of these puzzle pieces fit together to figure out what is it that the young professionals want in the community that they choose, why are they leaving, and what can we do to make them stay. And we have all had that discussion at length, and it's not like we can become a walkable Cambridge, but we can do a bit better by kind of planning some things. So all of that said, that's kind of my planning board hat and view of a proposal like this, even though this one applicant is not all those moving parts. He's just the residential developer.
Well, if I may, he's also alluded to, and I was glad to hear him talk about commercial development in the periphery of your unit. I mean, if you bring in 280 units and have that concentration of people, you're going to expect to see some expansion of the rest of the facilities down there, either in restaurants or in stores or in something. And so being aware of that and being conscious of the parking requirements and traffic requirements that those will bring in and the impacts that that'll have on your people is critical. And I'm glad to hear you're at least cursorily thinking about it, if not really strongly thinking about that as you develop this.
We are. Thank you.
Other comments and questions? Thank you for going through the conceptual design phase. I think it would have been very rocky to start with a site plan or a subdivision. This would be a site plan.
Whatever. We do appreciate the allowance to be here, and we understand the issue that created it, but hopefully it's worked out well for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't work too hard over Christmas on it.
Okay. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. The one that I want to bring up briefly is just a continuation of the discussion from last meeting when we had our friends from the National Regional Planning Commission talking about a sidewalk and pedestrian plan. The conversation kind of developed into a discussion about how we gain and gather some public input, and I wanted to just maybe put a ribbon on the discussion to say that there's some effort by Tim to take a look at what some options are to gather public opinion in a number of ways, including either electronically or social media or at polling stations or doing some other things. And that probably discussion will develop probably in January and February, and then we'd have an opportunity to confer again with the National Regional Planning Commission. But I do want to at least offer everybody a chance to talk about how we might gather that public opinion. And then also just to remind everyone that Tim's follow-up from that meeting was, if you've got any comments about what National Regional Planning Commission gave us as a map of the existing pedestrian and bike facilities, and you wanted to comment on those, send those to Tim so that he can kind of begin to use that. Tim has indicated to me that, well, what was his last count? He's gotten 0 feedback from us on that. So if you have any that you'd like to give on that, please do. Does anybody else have any thoughts or comments about the continuation of the development of the plan?
Well, Bob, I think Tim was looking to pull together our thoughts on what phase 2 of this study that NRPC is doing for us should include and produce. And to that end, I've got a page ready for him.
Yeah.
And I think we just kind of walked out of the last meeting and hadn't thought about it since. So I think what he's asking for is planning board input as to what you want to see in that next phase, what you want that plan to look like, what you want it to include.
Yep.
And that's what I'm putting together, thoughts of the things that should be in that plan. And including, there's also a piece here where I feel they have to work with the DOT to make sure that we're check the boxes on the things that DOT wants to see in a plan, because they are key to allowing us to continue sidewalk building in the north section. I think there's different sections in the town. There's the compact area, and then there's the DOT controlled areas, and they may be a little different in what we want to see done there. But that's my take on the conversation with Tim since the meeting, and I pass that on to everybody. And
I agree with everything that you said. I also liked that as it happened, the National Regional Planning Commission kind of landed on, they had 7 neighborhoods as they went down DW Highway. And when we did our master plan, I think we had 5. But the same kind of a concept, that this strip of road really has some areas that have a unique feel that should be considered independently. I think that was good. The one thing that I do want to mention, just so that we're aware of it, and we've got to keep this as a part of our thoughts so that we're not overstaying our welcome with the Regional Planning Commission. But the help that they've offered so far, they've done for free, which they agreed to do. And I think that they'll probably continue to support some of the things that we want to do for free. But everything that they can, are capable of, isn't necessarily available for free or through our dues or our membership with them. And we need to sort of remind ourselves to ask once in a while of them, is this still something you're willing to do for free, or are we assuming that you're willing to give us the house for nothing? And I don't know what we would do if there was a cost. We'd probably have to reshape what our choices were with them. But they've been very, very gracious to us, and I don't want to be, hogs at the trough. And
yeah, that's a good point, Bob. And it isn't really free. It's part of our dues, is how they're considering it.
Yeah.
So it's some sort of the services they provide to each town in the region, and this is the service they're providing for us this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you for that
Right.
comment. So I have no other discussion items. Does anyone else have any discussion items? With that, I am advised that we should not take action on our December 5, 2017 minutes, even though they're appearing on our agenda, because they haven't been reviewed yet by staff.
Correct.
And so we should allow that to sit.
Yeah.
And
Long
that
set
brings
needed in your
us,
packets.
and that brings us to item number 9 on our agenda,
No, it
which
doesn't.
is.
You've got to do this, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry. We set aside our capital improvement plan ranking system
Oh, yeah.
from the beginning of the meeting till now.
Yeah.
Good job, I'm still
Good
awake.
catch. Good
I'm
catch,
still
man.
awake. Yeah, I'm amazed that I am. But
Okay. So, our usual process is to go down the list and rank these things using our 1 to 6 scale, which starts with urgent as the highest priority, and then goes, which is cannot be delayed, needed immediately for health and safety. Necessary is needed within 3 years to maintain basic level and quality of community services. Desirable is needed within 4 to 6 years to improve quality or level of service. Deferrable is can be placed on hold until after 6-year period, but supports community development goals. Premature is needs more research, planning, and coordination. Inconsistent is contrary to land use planning or community development goals. So those are, again, urgent, necessary, desirable, deferrable, premature, and inconsistent. Now, we also have on occasion added some narrative comments like, please consider sidewalks, or please consider this before that, or move this forward, or do that sort of thing. So going down the list, item number 1 is a public safety complex, which they will do some exploratory work in the coming fiscal year with the hope of building it, or at least it's shown in the plan to be built in the year after that. Personally, I don't think that when you're looking at exploring it next year and building it after that and all the discussion we've had, that it's quite urgent, although I think the South Fire Station probably has some urgent needs. What do you guys think? Is that...
Well, it still falls under your description. It still falls into your description of urgent, which is 2 to 3 years necessary for the town to hang in there or something like that.
Yeah. So urgent actually didn't have a time frame. It says cannot be delayed, needed immediately for health and safety. Necessary is needed within 3 years to maintain basic level and quality of community services.
Okay. I take that back then.
Okay. It isn't necessarily something that I debate with anyone one way or another, whether someone picked urgent or necessary. I tend to lean towards necessary.
I would too. Lean toward
That the
that.
It is
Yeah,
clearly
me too.
necessary, whether it reaches
Yeah.
urgent or not. It depends on who you're talking to and what aspect you're talking about. Like you said, the South Fire Station replacement is reaching urgent, but certainly doing something in the next couple of years is a necessary item.
Yeah, and they've expanded the scope of it too.
Yeah, this
They
is
have.
why it's.
Yeah.
I have a feeling of this is a fiddle, because the South Fire Station, if they're worried about the accommodation, as I have been pointing out for I think 10 years, there is a huge plot of land which they spend an awful lot of time in the summer mowing, on which you could put a nice 4-bedroomed house for about $65,000, which would give them everything that Paul said they need. Now, by sticking the fire station together, it obviously screws up that point. Do we think it's a good idea to move the fire station away, the police station away from where it is? I don't know. I have views that it's undesirable. I think that the police station should be where it is. It's in the centre of where the town is and where the town structure is. So I'm unhappy about what they're talking about. But that's my comment. I don't like the idea of moving both the police station and having a the South Fire Station together somewhere down near Continental Boulevard. I think that's the wrong place for the fire station. Police station.
Police station.
I'm sorry, I fall over my teeth.
No worries. So I don't know anything about running a police department to speak about what it's like to be here, there, or elsewhere. But as a citizen, I seem to like it central and right there. And we've got schools here, we got town hall, we got a court, we got the police station, we got a library, we got kind of all of this stuff, and it's not that far to the central fire station. You could walk to all of them in a few minutes. I suspect that maybe there's some space limitations in their existing facilities that are part of driving this. I like the idea of having a safety complex because
Yes,
I think
so
that
do
there
I.
are some synergies. It does sort of raise my eyebrow to say the safety complex isn't central. It's kind of off to the side. I don't know, but I respect the professionals who at the fire department and police department who would guide this decision to know what that means to whether they could actually get to a place. I do know that the police aren't all sitting over at the police station waiting for a phone call to come in. They're all driving around, and maybe they're right out front when you call them, and they come by. I also know with the fire department, they've talked about the distinction between positioning fire equipment versus positioning ambulances, and all of that kind of stuff goes into it. I think that they're still talking about space studies and effectiveness, and that's what kind of makes for me says I can't be urgent. If you're still kind of doing space studies and you're not really sure what you need or if it's this, we're not really in the urgent category. I think the fire component of this is necessary. It's the first time it's been suggested to me that the police department has needs to do something with their building. It doesn't surprise me that they have needs to do something with their building, but I've never heard that before in a CIP.
No, they haven't. They haven't talked about it in the past publicly, but they are cramped for space, and their building is falling apart around them to some level. Not as bad as the Public Works Department highway garage has been. Obviously, it would have been much more urgent, but they have 5 or 6 air conditioning units. One of them went totally south recently and had to be replaced, and the others are on the verge of decay. And so there are various issues about that building, not the least of which is the brick veneer wanting to peel off the building and things like that require work. Now, I agree with you. It's really nice feeling conceptually to have the police department in the center of town. What I don't know is how to solve the problem and still keep a police department in the center of town. I mean, there's not enough space there to build, unless you go build a 3-story building or something like that in that same spot, which leaves you with nothing for the year while you're tearing down and rebuilding that building. So there's a lot of issues and concerns with trying to do that. Plus, parking, for the police vehicles, the crime unit, the ATVs, the motorcycles, the bicycles and stuff that are collected. Just general storage is very much at a premium in that site. And they're just running out of the ability to deal with it.
A small service that they offer, which is another one that's convenient to have in the middle of the town, is this notion that if you've done some kind of a Craigslist transaction, you can actually do the exchange and the sale in the parking lot of the police under a camera supervised by them, so that you don't have to worry about meeting a stranger somewhere and whatever that is when you're doing some kind of a I bought this on Craigslist kind of a thing, and you don't have people coming to your house. I think that's pretty neat, but it does use a couple spaces and it requires a camera. It is convenient to have it right here. I wouldn't, but then again, as much as I think it's neat, I've never actually used it. So
no.
Anyway,
and being in a public safety facility out on Continental Boulevard would not be that far off for anybody to get to. I mean,
I think I kind of come back to my first comment is I have no idea what it takes to run a police department, and if they think that it can be over there and be effective, that seems pretty reasonable to me within the police, because they're always on patrol somewhere. The fire department is the other kind of a situation where they do sit and wait in a place, and then when something happens, they all get in the truck and go. And it is important where the truck started, because that's how long it takes to get someplace. Anyway.
And that just follows on to what they currently have. With the Central Fire Station and the South Fire Station all being manned 24 hours, they're just moving the South Fire Station to a slightly different portion of the southern part of town, making it a little bit larger, talking about putting more meeting space, training space, and things of that nature into it to make it a public safety complex. But they would still, no doubt, keep the Central Fire Station as a staging point for vehicles and men, firemen, generic, to be able to reach other parts of town.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I wonder what they do with the building department, whether that would stay central or go to the new safety
It'd
complex.
have to stay, it'd have to be down.
It's a
would
good
think
question,
we'd
but
have
I
to
would imagine
stay.
it would stay here just because
Yeah.
there's plenty of space now that would be in this building rather than bringing everybody down. But and the other part of when they moved it there was that community development and the building could still work easily in exchanging plans and communicating. If they brought it down to the other part of town, it would be more difficult and take away yet another one of those synergies, like the police and the courthouse, kind of thing. And it just,
Anyway. So is everybody satisfied on number 1 to call it necessary?
Yeah.
I am.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm satisfied with necessary for that.
What would you like?
I think it's desirable, but not necessary. But I'm outvoted, so Mr. Chairman, I recognise.
Necessary it is. The bridge on bridge over Babusick Brook on DW Highway. My initial scribble was to call that urgent
I would
because
agree.
of the pedestrian situation
But
over that bridge.
you
and-
can't. I mean, if it's not going to get built until 22, 23.
No.
I think
Number
it's
2. This is being built in.
No, it's way out there.
Oh, it's way up.
It is way out there, but I think the only reason it's out there is because that's the first chance we
Trying
can
to
get
get
a
the
dollar.
state's
Money
money.
comes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know that the bridge is falling in, but I do know that it does constrict the water flow, and that causes the flooding problems
Oh,
or
it does, yeah.
backflow
And
problems.
there's no pedestrian access over
Yeah.
it.
And those are the two elements that sort of made me fall on urgent, but I get the idea that
I'm with urgent.
I mean, yeah, I'd go ahead with urgent, but it, it kind of begs the question of if we can't delay it, why is it delayed 5 years or 4 years?
Because we don't have the money.
Well, I understand that, but you can say that for every project on here, that we don't have the money. I mean, if we had the money, we'd do them all next year.
That's true, although one of the
Probably
things that
true.
we can do is add a narrative
Yeah.
comment that says we've ranked it urgent because we think it should be done as soon as possible. We understand the competing interests. Please try to move it forward if you can.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
you
that's,
know.
that would be
Yeah.
great. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
So, Robert, you got the gist of that narrative since this is your memo to write? Stormwater drainage improvements, kind of doing those on a progressive, couple $100,000 a year. I don't know what you call that. Is that urgent?
I
Because
call
you
that
kind of do it
necessary.
I'd say it's necessary.
I mean, it's,
Yeah,
it's
it's like
not so
maintenance.
urgent that you do the whole thing at once, but it's important that
Yeah.
it get done, and
I also really like the idea of having a plan that cycles through the work that you need to do, and you don't have to try and swallow the whole thing down at once.
Yeah.
Okay, so necessary on number 3. Paving, the $750,000 paving and infrastructure improvements in number 4, I think fall in the same category.
Is it
same
Same-
necessary
same
category to
necessary,
maintain
Yep.
town services.
Infrastructure improvements to pave gravel roads.
Well, it's necessary because the reason they want to do it is because I suspect it's the grader that's the problem,
It is, yes.
and the grader's going to fall apart, and graders are quite expensive, so they want to pave them before they have to replace the grader, or so they don't have to replace the grader.
The grader.
So
Yes, I agree with all of that. I'd
So
put
it's necessary.
on that.
yeah,
Paving DW Highway.
That's
That's desirable.
because they've done it, and this is really just patching to keep it in as good a shape as possible. It's probably desirable
it's desirable. Yeah.
Yeah.
to avoid
Yeah.
bigger problems down the way.
These are good ones.
The Wire Road intersection improvements.
Geez, that's way out there.
It's
It is-
desirable.
It is way out there. My scribble was D for desirable.
Yes.
I get that the intersection doesn't operate well. It certainly isn't the first thing that I'd do with $1.2 million if I had it around.
Yeah. I agree.
And the other part that's on my mind there is that I wouldn't put a red light there if you paid another $10 million to make us do it. I mean, I just think a red light is a terrible idea there.
Yeah.
So desirable. Everybody
Yeah.
agree with that? It's almost inconsistent with that red light there, though. It's almost inconsistent with planning goals.
Yes, I would
But
agree with
does
it.
it-
Yes,
does it
I would like
specify
you
a
to
red
put
light?
that.
Does it specify a red light?
It's got a choice. It's a roundabout or a
It's
red
a
light.
roundabout or a red
A
light.
signalized intersection.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah,
that.
choice
I thought-
B is signalized.
I thought
and-
we still had an option for a stop sign there.
We've got a stop sign.
It's not one of the two that are in this
Well, they were talking
capital
about
improvement
making it a 90-degree and putting a stop
90
sign.
degrees
or-
with a stop sign.
plan. It says
For now.
signalized in here.
Well,
Well,
that's
they
not
didn't talk
Wire
about
Road.
it in here, but they've talked about it in the past. But
Yeah.
Ah.
Let's take a quick look.
And then once you see how nicely the stop sign works, you won't be arguing for a red light.
What? But there is a stop sign there now.
Well, yes,
Yeah, but
but
it's
he-
at
It's,
that
I know
funny
it's
angle.
badly aligned, but it's
Yeah.
still a stop sign.
yeah,
And people go sailing around that corner off of DW Highway, and the southbound
Yes, they do.
traffic becomes a problem.
That's
so-
right.
Oh, no, it does have stop signs. So various options are being considered. Sharp curve to align Wire Road at 90-degree angle to Daniel Webster Highway with traffic signals or stop sign, depending on the signal warrant study, or a roundabout intersection. As part of the project, a new point of ingress-egress to the Twin Bridge Park Bice Field MYA building facilities that would improve safety versus the existing drive across from Church Street. So what I would say is whatever we pick on that one, whether it's desirable or otherwise, I might suggest a narrative comment to say that to the extent that a traffic light becomes part of the plan, then it's inconsistent, but
Yeah.
otherwise it's desirable.
Yeah, we can always put our footnote on it. right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Is everybody okay with a footnote like that?
Yep.
I
Yeah.
am.
Turkey Hill intersection improvements.
The same rather applies.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. It's much less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, they cited,
There's a lot of accidents there. They cited a bunch of accidents.
I'm amazed it's that many.
On
I am
Turkey Hill?
too.
at Turkey Hill in
No, I thought
Babusa.
that
Turkey
was
Hill to
Wire Road was
Babusick. I've never
16.
seen I've never seen an
It's like
accident.
playing roulette. It's fun to drive.
Turkey Hill into what?
You
Into
never know what's
Babusick.
coming down the road.
Yes.
15
My
accidents in
daughter
7 years.
was
yeah.
involved in an accident.
Oh, well, there
there.
you go. I defer to you then.
But that was, That was in 1985 or so.
There were a lot less people back then.
There's actually, I think, more accidents between Meeting House Road and Amherst Road, but that's another. That's nobody's going to do anything about that.
Meeting House in Amherst.
Meeting
where we have
House
the
to
cop.
Amherst.
Yeah, we get-
Regularly there are accidents there
It gets quick through there. That's
because there's
why.
people.
Yeah,
are
with
tr-
that little
people are
jog, if
trying to
you're-
do that.
I would think there was more trouble with where Turkey Hill turns and McQuestion goes off.
Well, anyway, go on.
Because you can't see up that hill.
All one has to say is the police. The police must have given them the numbers.
So what do we want to put on Turkey Hill improvements?
I still say desirable.
I guess
Yeah,
desirable.
Desirable.
Mm-hmm.
Merrimack River Boat Ramp Access Improvement formerly at Griffin Street.
Yeah, this is a big project.
I think that's a huge project.
And, I don't. It sort of popped out of the woodwork for me. I know they were talking about making the Griffin Street accessible, and now all of a sudden they can't do that because they can't get the equipment in. Da 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 da. Da.
Well, they've always said that, and I've always been part of that argument or discussion that you can't get around that curve onto Griffin Street, and you know, coming to get there, especially if you're pulling a trailer, it's very difficult to do that. In a single car, a sedan or something, you can get around
Yeah.
there and do that.
Yeah.
But just to put in that improvements and have it wash out on an annual or semi-annual, you know, biannual basis just seems like a huge amount of work to try and get the equipment back there to repair that road. And
Yeah.
so with the acquisition of the Sklar property south of that area and things, I think they were looking at other opportunities for being able to get to a boat ramp.
Yeah. There is another opportunity to get to that boat ramp on Griffin Street by crossing over the railroad, but you have to cross private property to get there. And that's
Right.
a block.
Yeah, that's one
But
thing.
this piece of property, I'm telling you, is 30 feet down, and it's almost straight down to the river. It's going to take a huge excavation to make that into something, and I just wonder where the value is. You go to Greeley Park and launch your boat there, you know.
Works for me. I mean, I saved $250,000 or whatever,
Yeah.
and not even do it at all.
Here.
So I've got maybe mixed feelings on a couple of things. So I don't know that a boat ramp sort of opens up the world to accessing the Merrimack River because not that many, well, maybe some people do have boats, but some people don't have boats. At the same time, I think the fact that we've got this great river that is just absolutely invisible to the town, it's just not really, it's just such a shame. What a wasted resource to have this great river, and there's just literally nothing recreational the average Joe can do with it to get to it or use it or look at it or sit by a restaurant and have a coffee or
I know.
what a waste. So anyway, those are my two thoughts. I don't know that a boat ramp is the solution to
I
it's
don't
such a
either.
waste.
The problem is the railroad track. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
that's the big
divides the
problem.
town from the river. You can't get on the other side of it. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly no restaurant's going to build out there because they won't get any traffic. And
No, that's it. And historically, that's one of the strangest things is that railroads often follow the rivers because when the railroads were built in the 1800s, everybody thought that land sucked. And it flooded all the time and put the railroad there.
Yeah.
give it to
Well,
them.
it's a, it's a,
You have that junk.
Yeah.
it's usually your minimum grade too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, that's
grades
the
are
point.
all
It's the
problem.
minimum grades because railroads don't like grades.
Yes.
At any rate, what do we think of the boat ramp? Can we give it a desirable? Does it get less than that? I don't think it certainly gets any higher than that.
Oh no, I think
I'd give it
I would-
deferrable.
I would
Yeah,
even wonder it's premature.
Yeah.
If
I don't know
the
about-
drops that much, it's premature. I don't know. I don't know the site where this is going to
Well,
happen.
I went and looked at the site, and that's where I got my impressions.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't know enough about the plan. There's really I haven't been to the site. I don't know the thing, but
Yeah.
the idea that there's a 30-foot drop when more than enough construction equipment in the world, we can dig big holes.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to get down there, 30 feet isn't going to stop us, but
No, it can be done, but it's tremendous amount of excavation and tree removal along the bank and everything to get. It's got to get down there and then
Yep.
launch your boat.
Get
and then
back
you
out
gotta
again.
get back up
Yeah.
out of there to a parking area. There is some space there on the property of the wastewater treatment plant. It's right just south of the wastewater treatment plant.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but
You can go and
people in
look.
the
There's a
public
chain
works
link
have
fence that keeps
suggested
you
it.
out of there now.
Pardon?
There's a chain link fence there, but you can go and see, you can get an idea if you want to go down and have a look at it. But I don't know for this purpose.
I think that being in that location down south of the wastewater treatment plant, it absolutely is not going to be the cure to let's go make use of this resource.
Let's
It's going to be
go see
there's going to be
the-
5 boaters that use it, and they'll love it, and they'll talk about it, but the rest of the town won't even know it's there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. I think I would put deferrable, but
Yeah, that's what I like.
Let's make
go
it
deferrable. Severn's Bridge Canoe Launch Ramp Access Improvements.
that's
This seems
that's
to be-
small change that's being done because the current place is washing out and having issues and stuff like that, and it's a safety concern and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So,
It's also not very much money, and
well, that's what I just said. Small change, and so
True.
it's
Necessary.
to avoid the safety and the washout or erosion
Hmm.
issues and concerns. I could go along with necessary.
necessary. I
Necessary.
can go along.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Daniel Webster and Woodbury sidewalks.
Well, this is
I
mandatory.
think that's necessary.
I think it's
This
necessary.
is in. This
I
is
think
in
all
the
the
works.
sidewalks are necessary.
It is. That's one of the ones that's gotten its grant funding. It's going to take a while to poke around with the process.
Yeah.
They're only building it a couple years out, but
Yeah.
I'm happy with necessary.
This one could be deferred.
Daniel Webster and Babusick Lake sidewalks.
Well,
I mean, you put the word placeholder on there.
they're
So
placeholder because they don't know until they get a TAP grant if they're going to do it.
well, but that shouldn't.
That shouldn't.
Should that be controlling whether it's important or
I'm not saying it's that, but well, I
I mean, I
think-
realize they don't know, and which is why they just put
Yeah.
a placeholder saying that maybe they can get it then. But
So the Daniel Webster and Babusick Lake sidewalks as a placeholder gets you along Babusick Lake Road all the way to Madeline Bennett
Yep.
and along DW Highway where?
Oh, they had a little map, didn't they?
That's a long sidewalk. Jeez.
I mean, they talked about basically the compact urban area
Yeah.
and the lake road. So it goes
That's
from
got to be a few miles.
connecting the library, the adult community center.
Okay. They go from the library up past the police station and catch in on that side of the road in front of the cemetery.
Well, it depends where the police station's going to be.
Well, the present police
Sorry about that.
station. Let's
Or
say
that
there's-
brick building that happens to be there at the moment,
The
whether
new
it's
library,
bricked or
you mean?
not.
Priority 7 on the plan also proposes to connect sidewalks on the east side of DW Highway between Loop Road and Twin Bridge Park.
Yeah. And that is a tough one to build.
Yeah, it is. But those are pretty central to the
Yes,
developed
to the
area of town,
center.
town
The whole
They
center.
concept of the
certainly
town
are.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's still going to be the town centre. See, this is what
Are
worries
you
me.
going to move
With-
it down to
with-
Continental Boulevard or what?
Well, I mean, with the Merrimack, whatever the thing they're building, with the old shores, and we're moving the police station and the central fire station down that way. We're going to building this 200. I mean, where is the town centre?
Well, the town hall, the court, the fire station.
It goes
It's all
between
still
Fraser
here.
Square and Front Street, east of the Turnpike.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The police station though is one that is it's east of the Turnpike. So if they vacated that building and the town sold it, that could be commercially developed.
Yep.
The way that it's zoned now.
Yeah.
And some more retail in that area is what would make people come down to the down. I mean, because unless you want to go to Court or Town Hall,
There's no reason to come to the center of town.
what else we got down here?
Yes! Some people go to church.
Yeah, and go to church, go to school, go to the library.
Yeah.
Go get a mattress at that blue building or a used car at the nice place
At the
across
place
the way.
next to it.
Yeah, go down to Portofino's.
Wouldn't he please wash off those cars? You know, there's an inch of dirt on them. No, I think
Anyway.
But you digress.
So the sidewalk enhancements at Babusick Lake and what are our choices again? Urgent, necessary, desirable, deferrable, premature, inconsistent.
Guess I'd have to go with desirable.
Well, let's give it desirable. I'd
Yeah,
say.
I agree,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Joppa Road to Madeline Bennett, which is the rest of the way to the middle school.
Yeah.
Give that the
Same
same rank. Desirable.
Yeah. Desirable.
Yeah.
I kind of like
So
that
then the
one
next
as-
thing is the town will want to have to buy another sidewalk cleaning machine, which is another $1 million or something.
Oh, come on.
Not quite $1 million, but it's
150,000
or
Yeah,
something like
they're
that.
not-
Yeah.
They're not $1 million, but they're not cheap. The one thing about that stretch, and I won't vote against the deferrable. I think it's fine, but that Joppa Road to Madeline Bennett kind of completes most of that road
Yes.
out there on
Yeah.
that side of the turnpike, and is leading you to a school and into the school's sidewalk system.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Now I don't know how many people are going to walk to school. My kids walk to school, but they're
There's a lot of
I'm on the other
biking.
side.
And there's some biking
Get
to
me. We
school.
go through the woods.
Biking to school too, isn't there?
I see your daughter out on the end of the driveway. She's not walking to school from.
No, she's taking the bus, but James will. She's not at the middle school.
Oh.
James goes to the middle school.
Oh, okay.
He'll be wanting a car soon.
Yeah. Yeah, they will. Anyway, I think deferrable is fine on that.
I know where you can find a truck. Oh, no.
Deferrable.
Desirable. I'm sorry, desirable.
Desirable. Thank you.
D's or D's.
D's or D's.
Sewer line extension, Mayflower and McQuestion sewer basins.
Well, it's necessary.
Yeah, I think that's necessary. The whole pile of library ones, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, I think all go together, and they're all really sort of, I don't think they have any sense of which direction they're going in, and it's kind of, if we've got to keep the building, we've got to maintain it, but we really don't want to keep it, so maybe we get a new one.
Yeah.
Sounds to me like we're not really sure. That's-
Premature.
Yeah, like furniture. Haven't used
Well,
that one yet.
it's-
Throw that one out there.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Well,
the
given-
one thing about it is they are throwing it way out. 6 years from now, so they're kind of already deferring it.
I mean, this
Well,
trend,
the,
this
the whole new
trench-
library is out there 6 years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, who knows whether we're going to need libraries with all these Kindles and other things that everybody. I mean,
People have been saying that for 10 years.
Library,
we need
library
libraries.
people will lynch you if you say
I know
that.
that.
Too loudly.
I've said it, and I've been lynched by one of the trustees who lives very close to me. He beats me up every time I say it, but I keep saying it.
Yeah, I mean, to make my own personal view clear, I support the library. I use the library with my kids, or they use it more than me, but we use it. I think that the library is going to morph into something different than what it was
Yeah, exactly.
before, and be more of a community center.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I've seen anyone draw up a plan for how our library is going to make that more for that transition. Yeah, I think, shelves full of books is kind of yesterday's news, but there's going to be something that is a cultural, learning, educational, public access
space,
kind of
yeah,
a thing.
Yeah.
It'll always be called a library, but I think it'll just look a lot different than what it's ever been. Where we put that in the budget, and are we even on that path here? Is anybody that is in charge of this process thinking that way? Geez, I don't know.
I think they're thinking that direction, but they haven't turned that boat as far as you just mentioned. So,
Yeah.
so they're,
Yeah.
they're guiding that way, but
I think
I don't
Tom's
think they're
right.
heading that way.
That's what my sense of the situation. You're
I-
correct.
I'm reminded of exactly that whenever we hear from the library, and the first thing that any library wants to talk about is, we've got X thousands or millions of volumes of books on our shelves that are in circulation. And of course, with that one, it's thousands and not millions, but university libraries deal with millions of volumes.
Yeah.
And that bragging about the number of volumes is like,
that's yesterday's
1960s
news.
thinking,
But that's
yeah.
that's what defined libraries for so long, and so
it did, but that's sort of what reminds me that they're still not quite thinking about it the way that I want them to think about it. I want them to really talk about transforming into something other than, we've got all this
a
stuff that you
storage
can come
room for
look at.
books, yeah, that
Anyway,
are accessible by some catalog system.
yeah, I mean, I like the idea of a lending library if you want to have a book, and I'm not one of those that, I am one of those people who will say, there's something about holding a real book, and I'm not really bought into Kindles quite as a replacement. But nevertheless, libraries do have to be something different than a pile of a huge collection of old books, especially because man, almost everything that you want, that you would look up on books, you just get on the internet now. You don't even need a Kindle. Anyway.
Should we, I know you lumped all these together, but wouldn't it make sense to, like, the trench by the children's room, like, that's more of a priority than a new library, right?
So it's a toss-up. I mean, so here's my read of this. Someone's thinking strategically and saying, hey, if we want to convince people that we need a new library, we got to show them that the old building isn't going to stand forever. If we're going to, why waste money on a 40-year roof for a building we don't like? Why waste money on a new trench for a building we don't like? Why waste money on a new parking lot for a building we don't like? Look at this. It's going to cost us $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 just to stay in the space we're in. Why don't we talk about a new space? So that's what I see going on in the paper in front of me. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, that makes sense. I was just curious because, I mean, my little kids go in that room all the time, and when that big rain happened, you know, it was down for a while. Like that to me is more important than a slate roof, but I understand what you're saying. I get what you're saying, where you're coming from.
But you pick up on a good point, is that if they're actually getting water intrusion and damage to their building, which they have, they absolutely have.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking sandbags out there to prevent it. I mean, but I mean, you know, I hear what you're saying. I just think that fix is a lot easier than, you know, some of these other ones.
It is, and that's the earliest one on the list, but even that one, they're not talking about touching for 3 years.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
No, it is.
I mean, probably put the new library next to the new safety
children's
complex.
windows is way out in 2021.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is.
So
true.
maybe they've come up with a solution for now. That's
Sandbags, you just said it.
Cold patch.
Move everything, put it up on
Sump
concrete blocks so it's not in the water when it comes in.
Giant tarp over the whole building.
Well, I mean, we put a new parking lot in there. So I mean,
Yeah.
that thinking is kind of, you know, it's okay to put a new parking lot in there, but if you're going to blow it up in 5 years, why do we need to do that?
No, that's true. Although, and I don't want to think out their plan for them. Nobody has ever, in my view, discussed doing a new library on that site. They'd go to a new place, and that building would be, something else would be done to it, whether it's a public use or it's sold to become a private use. That building has got a lot of life in it as an office building or some other uses other than a library. I don't know whether it makes sense to the town to do any of that stuff. So the new parking lot or the drainage trench or the slate roof all adds to what you could sell that building for.
The building, yeah.
And also making sure it doesn't depreciate in value because of its damage by rain and stormwater. Anyway.
I think we're in the right spot though with
deferrable. Is everybody happy with that one?
I'm not happy with deferrable on the water trench. I think that's really desirable, if not necessary. That trench, that water is a real problem. I mean, it damaged a lot of material. It closed the library for.
But I think they would know more if it's acceptable now. Otherwise, I think they would have probably put in some kind of emergency funds into fixing that. This is probably a lot more involved, you know.
I don't know, they spent 18 years getting asbestos out of the schools.
Well, now we got bats.
Yeah.
So,
so anyway, not they, because it's a different they. That's a whole different they. But anyway, I wouldn't argue with if anyone wants to put necessary on the trench.
I mean, we can do that. I'm fine with that. I mean, that was kind of the point I was trying to make is if you're going to lump these together, I mean, I would do that one first, and then they almost have it in the right order. I don't know if I would move the drainage up a year or two, but it really depends upon who has, who has actually gone in there and seen the needs of that place. And if it's fine now, then fine. If it can last another 5 years or 4 years, and deal with it then. But
we don't have to guess. Somebody wrote a description in here somewhere.
It's not in the.
I don't think they talked about the trench part, but because it was
drain evaluation repair.
None of the library stuff was.
Yeah, they didn't put it in there.
They didn't.
With flooding 2 consecutive years, 16 and 17, during heavy summer rains, the drain in the trench should be evaluated to determine a better configuration to prevent additional future flooding of the children's room. Coordinate with town's proposed stormwater drain evaluation project ?
Oh, it's in that page. Okay.
Yeah.
So
if they flooded 2 consecutive years, being this year and last year,
it's probably not solved. Is that what we're thinking?
Yep.
It's not solved.
It doesn't sound solved.
No.
I think hoping for a dry summer is.
See, this seems weird to me because this building's been there for how long? 50, 40 years now? And all of a sudden, the last 2 years, we've had issues. I mean, we must have had more rain than that in the past. It's just, it seems odd to me that it's all of a sudden malfunctioning.
So, and I couldn't guess or estimate why it might be different, but it is possible that developments on neighboring sites or someone clogging up a drain somewhere or something else could be the thing that brings
Yeah.
it to the head right now.
Yeah.
Certainly hasn't been any new buildings around that area, but a clogged up drain or a change in elevation.
Or something that collapsed like all their other sewers have done elsewhere. Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Could change the world. Anyway,
Yeah, spent a lot of time in the library.
I'm okay with saying necessary on the drainage bit if everybody else
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
The
Would you
new
then-
library itself, we've just kind of put in as deferrable, but that one's 8 years or 7 years from now. And
Were the other library things desirable, or?
deferrable, necessary, deferrable.
I think the rest of them are going to depend upon if that new library wants to come up. Obviously, you're not going to put a new roof on something you want a new library for. So
Well, you are if you're trying to maintain the building so you can sell it or use it for
Yeah,
something
it's
else.
true.
Yeah, and in the meantime, keep the water out of your stacks,
yeah.
And
or your
premature
computers,
for the
or
mo-
your
for the new
videos, or
library.
whatever else a library houses.
What did we decide here, Bob? What's 17, the sidewalk
Sidewalk was, what I've written down was deferrable.
deferrable, huh?
Yeah.
Slate roof deferrable. I mean,
Yeah.
they're looking out 5 years from now. Drainage trench necessary.
Yeah.
Elevator deferrable. I wrote deferrable by the new library, the main building, but
Yeah.
I have a question mark as to whether that is, since, well, we don't even know what that looks like. That sounds, I mean, if you read the description of premature, needs more research, planning, and coordination.
Yeah.
That's what
I mean,
I think it is.
Premature sounds a little derogatory, but
Yeah.
the rest of this, needs more research, planning, and coordination, is right on the mark.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
It is.
It is. So you're going to call it
Premature.
What do you think?
premature?
But a lot of what Paul presented tonight was premature in that respect. I mean, he's the public complex, the public safety complex. He wants to spend more time
True.
doing space needs and things of that nature. And well, I hear what you're saying. On the other hand, I think a new library is desirable to fulfill the needs that haven't been
Yeah.
defined yet, as far as a gathering space, community educational center, XYZ, not necessarily a place to store books. Because you can do that in buildings almost anywhere. But
I'll give them a, what do you think?
Give
Who
them
who likes desirable?
I like desirable.
1, 2.
I
I'll go
like
with that. 3.
desirable.
All right, that makes it desirable. That's enough for us to be the
Okay.
majority. New athletic fields.
I keep getting mixed signals about athletic fields. We haven't heard the whining lately, but
Well,
the
come to the
need
town
go
council
away.
meetings. We're hearing the whining. It's not as strong of a drumbeat.
Yeah.
Not really whining per se. It's just the consistent. It's needed. We don't have the space. We're overutilizing the fields that we have. The grass can't regrow. We either need to start putting in artificial turf or do something
Yeah.
because
Okay, so
You
you're
know,
getting it.
we are getting some
at
of
the
that.
council level. Yeah.
So I know that the YMCA fields were not really talked about as being town-run or town-available fields.
And
We
they're
also
way
have those.
overgrown from what I'm told now. So
What's that?
They're very overgrown right now, and
The ones that were never built on Melton's.
Right,
Yeah.
right out.
Ave.
yeah.
Not ones that exist.
Well, that's
And the other possibility is up at Greenfield Farms, they offered up some space for some athletic fields, and I know that they're not building the field, they're just offering the land for it, and building it seems to be, a pile of money. But it also seemed to me that there was a whole lot of turning your nose up to, oh, that's way out there, that's not really convenient, and who wants to drive way up there? We should have them all in one place. And, it's sort of
People
made
need
me
to start
feel like
volunteering their houses to be
beggars are
plowed
being
in to
choosers
be, yeah,
here.
yeah.
I don't know.
I thought it was a good deal to get that piece of land up there, and I'm surprised the fact that nobody jumped on it and said, oh boy, let's put in some improvements on that property, and or budget some improvements to that property to make it a ball field, because it's just a field now. It's just open land.
Yeah, and I think that the developer did say that they'd level it off if it's not already leveled, but not. they're
Well, I
not.
wonder who heard that then, because I didn't hear that through any of my other channels than in here,
That
but,
they'd level it off.
no, that was being offered as an option or an opportunity.
Oh, they
You
did.
know?
I think it might have been part of their final approval is that they've
Part of-
actually done
yeah.
something.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but who's heard it is what I'm saying, not who said it, but
Oh,
who's heard it.
Oh,
I
the
mean,
community
'cause
doesn't really know that
The
it's out there.
community has been very, very tied up with other issues of late and may have just let that slip underneath. And
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's
Well,
a note to the MYA, a note to,
I mean, I don't
Well,
see
it
the
works,
distance
isn't it?
anyway, because, I mean, speaking as one who regularly goes with granddaughter to soccer, wherever it is, and we travel some distances when it's an away game, so I'd go up there and play there anytime.
yeah.
yeah,
We
I
do
don't think
travel all
distance
over
is
the
a real
place, too.
problem.
You do,
I know that some of the towns that we play games in will have a complex with just a lot of fields in one place, and they can host a tournament
Yes.
and do those kinds of things. And hosting a tournament on 5 sites where there's 2 fields here and one over
Right.
there and
Would be
some
a
over here
That is a
nightmare,
problem.
yeah.
is kind of confusing. The high school in Amherst is one where there's a big soccer tournament every year.
Yeah,
they're-
they're very good.
And volunteer to do it. So, but if someone's holding out hope that somebody's, going to stretch out the town and find a 50-acre site in the middle of town and put a bunch of baseball fields or soccer fields in it,
That's not happening.
yeah, let's
I mean,
just stop the discussion. It just doesn't exist. There isn't a 50-acre vacant site in Merrimack other than Flatley.
It's gonna be donated, yeah, exactly. Flatley is about the only thing, and there, then you get to screaming about the PFOAs.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want the one down the south end where they did the conditional use permit, that one is slopey and broken up and all that stuff, and I think it's
Oh,
only
yeah.
35 acres.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So unless BAE moves out of town and
Well-
donates their property or something.
Wasn't there a commission at one point to look at the need for fields?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
there was.
Yeah, there is a-
There's a
They come
published
up with this
report
big
that
list. Yeah.
the Community Development Department has electronically. I'm sure they can send it to you. It was done before I was even a member of the planning board, so you're talking about 2007, 8, or 9 or something like that.
Okay.
That it was done.
Yep.
And it came up with a need for a lot of rectangular
Ship.
fields were the big priority, more than baseball or basketball courts.
Which is what got Melton Associates going on the Wright project, because they thought that's what they were going to, by getting that done, they were going to get everything else rubber stamped. I mean, that's why Melton came up with a plan,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
which now the fields have sort of proved not possible. I think why they went quiet on it.
Why
Well,
do you
you
think? I'm sorry, I didn't get your reasoning on that.
Well, Melton gave up on the
Yes.
and I think it's because somehow I think they were losing out somewhere when it was sort of split off. Anyway, I never understood why Melton spent so much time getting that plan approved and never doing anything. And I just assumed it was to do with the splitting off the land.
I thought it was the economy at the time. That's what I was told.
It was partly that, and then there was disagreements with who was going to make the improvements
Yeah.
on the field. And
And be responsible for it.
Milton thought all they had to do was get them approved.
That's right enough.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And once they realised they had to pay for that,
When
they
they
gave
had
up
to
on
pay
it.
for it.
Well, I think that's part of it, but also why they went through all the process of getting the plans approved for the senior housing. And it's pretty common, or at least it crosses my desk plenty, where a developer wants to have their approvals in hand so they can go looking for people that'll invest in it. Either bankers or
okay.
investors. Going with them and saying, I got 35 acres of land somewhere and wouldn't it be great if I did this, is a whole lot different than saying approvals in hand. We can break ground
We can go
tomorrow
build
if
80
you write me a
units right
check.
now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a
Fair
thing.
enough.
Makes sense.
So, and maybe I'm just speculating. I don't really know what one of the individual people's choices, but I think that's part of it. I think what we've learned, though, and I think this comes from the schools' CIPs, when they were talking about like redoing the football field at Merrimack High School with a grass field, They're talking about a $500,000, $600,000 expense for grass and $1 million expense for turf. And at those prices, I just don't see that land isn't the issue. We got land. That's not even 20% of the cost. If it costs that much to put in prescription athletic turf and make it drainable and do all of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
it's just ungodly expensive. It's off the charts. You know, and I know that when we go out to Wasserman Park, we're not playing on turf. We're playing on flat ground. Somebody flattened it off and threw some seeds around, and the grass all died, and there's like clover stuff growing everywhere.
Rocks.
Right. And we managed to get a soccer game in. You know, it happens. But is it perfect? No. Anyway, new athletic fields put way out there with a really high number and no specifics. Maybe it's not really our job to decide that it'll never happen because nobody's going to budget for it or find the stars to align with it. But we should just focus on whether it's necessary or desirable or not. I don't know.
I would say at best it's desirable. I mean,
I wouldn't give it above desirable.
No.
I think it's kind of out there. I think it's 1 or 2 below desirable.
1 or 2 below
that's
desirable.
deferable.
I've got it as premature.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, premature is fine with me because I personally, you know, being in the industry for 15 years of my life, almost half my life.
What industry?
Turf management and agriculture. Like, there's plenty of space, plenty. It's all about management and how you manage. Just like you manage a building, you manage the grass. Yeah. It's all about. It's not hard to do. Now, maybe I'm overspeaking, but I mean, if I had, you know, like you said, $500,000, I can do a lot of good things with $500,000. I mean, I've managed golf courses for less than that. Is my point.
I think that's valuable insight to have from somebody that's been in the business. I really appreciate it. I think when you consider the football field at the high school in the springtime when it's muddy and everybody wants to get out there and play from school, you can damage the turf when it's wet and things like that. When you're talking about baseball fields or soccer fields, when you get past the spring mud season, the turf does hold up pretty good.
Right.
And one of the things that I noticed from being a parent is when you sign your kids up for soccer or basketball, or yes, basketball, but doesn't really count in this, don't use turf. Baseball, they compress these seasons to where you've got practice, 3 nights a week and 2 games a week. And as a parent, you're going, every time I turn around, I'm rushing off to practice again. And then you finish the season in 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or something. Stretch it out to 8 weeks or 10 weeks and...
Yeah, but you can't because there's another sport coming up behind and they want that one instead. I mean, that's the big trouble. I mean, if you look at it, volleyball and football, and then suddenly that's over and now it's wrestling and basketball.
Well, that's competition for the kids, not for the grass.
It's
the grass is there waiting, it's available to play
It's what the schools want to get, or the teams want to get all these different sports played.
If we had 5 million, 10 million, however many it takes to make, I think it was something like 10 or 20 additional rectangular
between
fields.
10 and 20 rectangular fields.
Yeah,
it was what this report came up with as needed.
That's right, it was.
It's like 2 acres of field.
If you had that, then go build them,
yeah, right.
And that was the priority. But if we had the kind of money it took to do 10 or 20 rectangular fields, I'd say, do we need any intersection improvements? Do we need any sidewalks?
Yeah, right.
I mean, how does that get to the top of the priority list? Maybe you'd say, okay, we'll do a couple of fields or 1 field and some sidewalk and some intersections and some whatever. But I ain't never going to be laying out the kind of jack it takes to get 10 or 20 new
I think
fields.
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions though is the saving grace is not synthetic turf. Like I'm so against it that it's almost laughable to me to sometimes when people just like, all you got to do is put a synthetic turf out there and problem solved. And sometimes it's not the case. Actually, it's oftentimes a lot harder to manage and take care of synthetic turf than it is natural.
But from a school's point of view, a synthetic turf is so much more useful for all the different sports. I mean, just look at Bedford. They play soccer, football, lacrosse, and field hockey all on the same damn pitch because it's synthetic turf.
And band practice. And
Fair enough, except now you've just reduced the life of that field because of all the.
Well,
and it's very hard to replace. So when you're talking,
But it's only, but you've only got one field to replace instead of having 20 fields, which you've
it's all
got
about,
to have
like I said,
otherwise.
it's all about management. It's all about
Yes,
scheduling and
I agree.
management. I mean, you know, it's a lot easier to throw a $120 50-pound bag of seed out there that's going to grow versus repairing stitches in a field that's you're going to have to contract out.
Well, it is, but I mean, and I don't want to say that we're comparable to, you know, professional sports, but every Sunday you can turn into an NFL game and watch the field, and it's torn up from the college game that was played there the day before. And they've got all the money and all the resources in the world to make the grass healthy, make it drain, make it seeded, sodded, whatever you can think of that you can do to it. And they're just trying to play 2 football games 2 days in a row, 1 time a week, and the field gets destroyed doing it. When you're talking about high school, I mean, they got a JV team and a freshman team and the senior team, and they've got practices, and then the band's got to get out there, and their field gets a lot more action than things where all the resources in the world can't protect that field. You have a concert in an NFL stadium, that field is junk the next week.
You're right.
It's true. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't know any.
But anyway, the school isn't what's before us right now, and
Right.
this isn't turf. A turf.
I think there's a lot of downside to synthetics that people don't really think about.
Hear it. I believe you.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's an alternative. It's just my personal opinion that it's not the way I would do it. That's all I gotta say. And if we go down that road, you'll hear a lot more about it. I was involved in it for quite a while, so.
One of the things that I remember from being the first couple of years on the planning board is I looked at these things out 5 or 6 years, and every year the thing that was 6 years out is still 6 years out.
Sure.
Yeah.
It hadn't got any closer.
I mean, like the last I remember, like I think when the school committee was here asking what they wanted to do, this was on there. So I don't know if this is encompassing just the school or the entire town.
No, this is
No, this is-
non-school.
this is-
Non-school.
Non-school. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
these are MYA's fields.
I just don't know if there's enough room. I mean, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fields down across from Budweiser are not ours, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
So at any given point,
We can lose them.
you could lose them, and that's concerning. And I don't know how to answer that question. Hopefully the relationship is still there. And I don't know if we use Bedford. I don't know if we even use Budweiser's fields or not. But that's a
No, they're not. No,
because
but
we've
you-
turned
but
up our
you've got-
nose to the beer.
But you've got the other side, you've got Colesman's, we're dependent on them. You've got the baseball fields and other fields up by the, what's the name? Yeah, Maquettes. There's a large number of the fields here are in fact corporately owned, and which they very kindly let us use.
fair enough. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I mean, they're being good corporate citizens, and they get some play,
Of
some
course,
benefit from that
they
stuff.
get some mileage out of being good corporate citizens.
I got you.
And we've got some fields that are on to town-owned property too, over by the
By the middle school.
by the Public Works Department behind
Yep.
their building in that neighborhood back there. There's a couple of
Down
baseball
Amherst
fields
Road.
back there.
Twardowski Field and
Yep,
Yep.
Bishop,
on Amherst Road, yes. There are
Bishop
some.
Field.
Yeah.
Bishop Field is another one.
is there a field there anymore?
At Bishop?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still got a rectangle.
Okay.
It's lacrosse mostly, but yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
what are we going to do with it? Premature.
It's my vote. Premature.
I'd go with premature.
Okay.
I'm there.
Works for me.
Premature it is.
Premature. Sewer connection.
My scribbles put necessary on both of the wastewater improvements.
Yeah,
I think
would
so,
say that's
yes.
unnecessary.
That stuff's worn out.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
desperately necessary.
It is, and one of the things that you never see is somebody that wants to build a new wastewater plant just for sport. You know, it's pretty much necessary by the time it gets on the list. Nobody ever says, hey, you know what we ought to
After
have?
all that discussion about athletic fields, building wastewater plants for sport, I love it. That's good.
That's true, I forgot the
Well, until you've lived in a town where there was...
That was my second job, dealing with wastewater compost, so I know all about that too.
The one thing that I also noticed, and just throw it out there, and maybe it doesn't matter because of where the money comes from, but 2 years hence, 1920 has got a total capital budget of $22.5 million. Most of the years are in the 1s, 2s, and 3s, with a couple of them that get a little bit bigger further out. But
Well,
holy
of
moly,
that
that's a huge year.
nearly $7,000 is bonded.
Well,
well,
more than that, the
this-
12,600 for the wastewater treatment phase plant
Those
Oh,
are
yeah.
those are
Three.
millions. 12 million.
is
Yeah. So,
12 million, yeah.
12 million,
Minor
sorry.
technicality.
No, it is. Some of it's bonded, some of it's sewer fees and all of that, and that's why I said it really, I guess, is ameliorated by where the money is coming from. But
Yeah, usually
Wow.
we try to even that out a little bit better,
yeah, that's a big
But-
slug.
but that's
Yeah. But, you
All
know,
right.
it's
there
all in
because of the
the,
bonding.
it's, well,
but some of the other bonds are running out, aren't they?
We do have a bond running out, I think, at the end of this year, but,
Yeah, I think I thought there was some.
and that's, and the highway garage is gonna slot right in.
Yeah, that's right. It took out the highway garage, took it over.
So, Robert, you got all of our notes. You've got our couple of narratives that we wanted to add to those. Does anybody want to sort of summarize those or restate those? Is everybody comfortable with where we're at?
I think I'm comfortable with when you said it. I was
Yes,
comfortable.
I'm very happy.
As long as Robert caught it when we said it.
Or he gets it on the tape, one of the two.
Anything that hasn't been mentioned yet in terms of narrative? Thank you for your support of sidewalks, something like that.
Yeah, let's do
Don't
it.
go
No?
too far with that.
I wouldn't push it too hard.
Or don't do
I'll
that.
hear somebody about.
I wrote thank and then it stopped, so should I stop?
You know,
Thank them for the whole process. I mean,
yeah,
the whole thing is well done.
Yeah, it was a
There
good
you go.
presentation.
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for
So
the
without
entire
singling
capital
out-
process.
Any
It's a good
particular
presentation.
pet projects.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay.
Now, having completed all of our business for the night, we're at item 9 on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Nelson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 5-0-0. We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Don't forget to turn your microphone off. And not bad. 10 o'clock at night.